Chapter 1381, Chunyi II. Chunyi Island. Waves splashed high on reefs that stood firm against the sea. Chunyi Island was originally an archipelago. In its early years, it only had a single immortal mountain rising from the sea. Over generations, the people of Chunyi Dao Gate had gradually moved mountains and reclaimed land from the sea. It now covered 70% of the area of Crimson Reef Island. From afar, the immortal mountain and its surrounding islands appeared orderly. Crescent-shaped pools on the island shimmered with light. Cultivators refined the energy of supreme yin, rising on clouds and mist. The scene was pleasing to the eye. They were not far from Crimson Reef Island, which in turn lay close to the Sword Gate. Relations among the three factions had worsened over the years. The fighting had been especially brutal at Green Pine Temple. Even now, the spirit items formed from fallen cultivators had not been fully excavated. That alone spoke volumes. The Chunyi Dao faction seemed tranquil and harmonious. Yet a streak of azure light raced across the island from the north, before halting in front of the immortal mountain and transforming into a man. The youthful-looking man wore blue robes that matched his pale green eyes. Standing with his hands behind his back, he went unnoticed by the patrolling cultivators on either side. Only the formation upon the immortal mountain rippled faintly, and a figure soared into the air in response. This newcomer wore white robes embroidered with wave and crescent patterns, a pale silver jade belt at his waist. His features were striking, with a high-bridged nose, yet his eyes were filled with vigilance. He stopped at a cautious distance and examined the man carefully. "I am Cheheng. Greetings, Grand Taoist Master. Might you be Taoist Master Buzi in person?" The man in blue was indeed Kai Buzi. His expression was calm as he replied, "Cheheng, Chunyi Immortal Dao has truly produced many talents in recent years. In just a few decades, your grandfather and grandson have both become Taoist masters. I wonder if Senior Yunsheng is present. A friend of the supreme Yang Dao lineage comes to pay a visit, yet cannot even enter the gate." Taoist Master Cheheng recognized him from those words. His expression grew distant. Though wary of Kai Buzi's formidable cultivation, he did not turn hostile and merely said coolly, "Grand Taoist Master, do not jest." Taoist Master Cheheng of Chunyi Dao showed no courtesy, as if only one sentence short of saying that the Azure Pond demonic sect could hardly be counted among the supreme Yang Dao lineage. Kai Buzi, however, paid it no mind and said casually, "Chunyi Dao now has 4 Taoist masters whose strength rivals Hengzhu, with Taoist Master Yunsheng presiding over all. Are you truly afraid of a lone wanderer like me?" Taoist Master Cheheng's expression was cold as he replied, "Grand Taoist Master need not jest with me. If there is nothing else, forgive me for not seeing you out." Kai Buzi let out a laugh and raised his hand, palm upward. A gray-black energy swelled up in his palm and condensed into a sphere the size of his hand. "Take a look, what is this?" This thread-like gray water sphere was clearly a highly condensed divine ability. Taoist Master Cheheng himself possessed this inheritance and needed no further examination. It was the divine ability Chaogui Hidden Form. Taoist Master Cheheng frowned. He had long known that Kai Buzi had broken through to the late Purple Mansion realm. This grand Taoist master would not have traveled thousands of kilometers to their mountain gate merely to flaunt his divine ability. For a moment he said nothing, yet after observing more closely, a sense of unease rose within him, and his heart gave a sudden leap as a feeling of familiarity surged through him. "This is our divine ability." Kai Buzi spoke casually, "I cultivate by refining my own nature, yet I have produced your gate's divine ability. Should Senior Yunsheng not take a look?" Taoist Master Cheheng remained silent, his gaze fixed tightly on Kai Buzi. The blue-eyed man said, "Some matters cannot be spoken of openly. One must enter the formation, must one not?" Cheheng finally wavered and hesitated for a moment. The formations of Chunyi Island were no trifling matter. Even if Kai Buzi intended trouble, he would be restrained within them. With 4 Taoist masters present, by all reasoning, his willingness to enter the formation was a gesture of sincerity. Cheheng let him in. A voice wrapped in divine ability echoed in his ear. Though unwilling, Taoist Master Cheheng could only step aside and invite him in. The two flew into the grand formation and were met with drifting snow. A crystal-clear circular jade pool stood at the summit platform. The water within was snowy white and tinged with moonlight. It seemed like both liquid and heaps of fallen snow. The tables and chairs by the show ray were half buried beneath it. A middle-aged man in white robes stood beside the pool. Kai Buzi finally showed a more serious expression and cupped his hands in greeting. "So it is fellow Taoist Fuxuan. Is Senior Yunsheng not present?" "My master has not been fond of travel in recent years and no longer emerges from seclusion." This middle-aged man did not seem to share the strong prejudice of other Chunyi Dao cultivators. He nodded slightly and invited him to sit by the circular pool, speaking softly, truly worthy of being the treasured tree of the Kai family. Had you followed Kai Wei's wishes, the Azure Pond sect and the supreme Yang Dao lineage would not be as they are today. Kai Buzi neither agreed nor denied with him. He merely smiled as he replied, "Surely you have seen it as well. I encountered a fortuitous opportunity and obtained an ancient technique and have cultivated Chaogui hidden form. I suspect this is your gate's Chaogui water-seeking method. I have come this time to verify it." He raised his brows with a smile and continued, "The Chaogui water-seeking method was bestowed upon the Zi family from the supreme Yang Dao lineage. It likely exists only within that house. Now that this Dao lineage has fallen into my hands, I need not elaborate further where the opportunity came from or which lineage it belonged to." Taoist Master Fuxuan had allowed him inside. He had clearly understood something. The divine ability in Kai Buzi's palm could not be faked. Whether it had truly been cultivated by refining his own nature was another matter. He merely raised his brows and said, "You say you cultivated it by refining your own nature. Why not stand beneath the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror and have it examined? That will reveal the nature of your divine ability." Chapter 1382, Retrieving the Item I. Kai Buzi was not the least bit surprised to hear this, and replied calmly, "Please." Seeing how unperturbed he was, Taoist Master Fuxuan was already 70% convinced. Though suspicion still stirred in his heart, the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror was left behind by the ancestor to suppress the Dao lineage. It gained extraordinary profundity after the ancestor's breakthrough and subsequent fall. It is not something ordinary spirit treasures can compare to. Since Kai Buzi is this confident, perhaps he truly cultivated it himself. Even though Kai Buzi was now a grand Taoist master and had cultivated countless divine abilities and secret techniques, it was absolutely impossible for him to deceive the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror, which was tied to the very life of the Chunyi Dao ancestor and his supreme Yang true inheritance. Taoist Master Fuxuan's heart began to pound. Could he truly have found a Dao lineage left behind by the ancestor? Taoist Master Fuxuan raised his brows and said, "Cheheng, go and invite the spirit treasure out." Cheheng cupped his hands and withdrew. Taoist Master Fuxuan turned to face Kai Buzi, his expression far more complicated as he said softly, "It belongs to the ancestor and cannot be moved lightly without cause. Cheheng has gone to burn incense and bathe. I ask the grand Taoist master to wait 3 days." Kai Buzi waved his hand indifferently. "It has been many years since I last saw fellow Taoist Fuxuan. Ever since we parted ways over the matter of Song Fangshan, I have missed you greatly." Taoist Master Fuxuan gazed at him deeply and replied, "You have overlooked one matter. I came personally to plead regarding Brother Chen Taojing, but Kai Wei refused to see me and sent you down the mountain to decline." This old matter was clearly unsightly. It was no wonder Kai Buzi had received a cold reception when he came to the mountain. Yet Taoist Master Fuxuan did not stop and continued, "As for Song Fangshan, and later Yu Yuxi, even Li Qijing at the end, we tried to persuade them. The Azure Pond sect has fallen to this state by its own doing." Not so, Kai Buzi did not agree and replied, "Kai, Tang, Ning, and Si flourished in those days. The 3 Yuans were in their glory. Tang Shecheng and Yu Ziuxian both stood under Tang Yuanwu. The younger generation had Kai Jian, Ning Wan, and Si Yuanli. Which of them was not a Purple Mansion realm seed? Tang Shecheng was even compared to me. Everyone believed the next generation would usher in a prosperous age for the Azure Pond sect. Back then, we only worried there would be too many Purple Mansion realm cultivators and not enough spirit artifacts to go around. Those with outside surnames were not considered trustworthy. If they lived too long, they might even become a liability. Who could have foreseen that Yu Ziuxian would be killed by Gu that Tang Shecheng would fall while attempting the Purple Mansion realm, that Yuanwu Peak would later foster Tang Sheju who also perished, and finally Yu Muxian would be killed by the Li family with Yuansu's backing. He shook his head slightly and sighed. It cannot be placed on one man alone. Back then, if there had been a few more Taoist masters surnamed Yu or Li, would that truly have been a good thing? Taoist Master Fuxuan fell silent before replying, "The Azure Pond sect is ultimately that one's domain. Even if he does not care or appear, his style influences it. You are one who seeks the Dao. With pristine water locking the Dao, it cannot be easy for you either." Kai Buzi looked at him quietly. He was unwilling to say more within the Chunyi Dao mountain gate and only spoke thus, "To seek the Dao does not mean there is only one path before me. My lifespan is long. The immortal might of the true monarch is unfathomable, but perhaps in a century or two, when the true monarch ascends another level and the chi of purifying dew can be harvested, a path will naturally open. If I cannot wait for such an opportunity and cannot become that great one's subordinate, then by accumulating connections and spiritual resources now, I can seek a path to reincarnation. That too is a road." He appeared broad-minded and at ease. Taoist Master Fuxuan nodded inwardly and said, "That may be the only way. Speaking of subordination, I have heard that a Taoist master of the Beihuan sect is attempting the Golden Core Realm and intends to become a subordinate of Dry Fire. The chances are high. I wonder whether he will attain the Tao in this world, and by what means that one will assist him. It would be a sight worth witnessing." The two soon fell silent. Although the two Taoist masters had met in their youth and known each other early on, they were ultimately different kinds of people. Their Tao lineages conflicted, and what little they could speak of amounted to nothing more than idle talk. Fortunately, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye for a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. Taoist Master Cheheng changed into white robes and approached with neat and proper attire, holding a jade tray. The mirror upon the tray measured about 27 centimeters across. Its body was snow white, its surface as clear as still lake water. It had cloud patterns supporting the moon on the frame, while the back bore intricate coiled hornless dragon motifs and feathered silver patterns that shimmered in interwoven light. Kai Buzi remained seated. He was not even facing the mirror directly, yet a sense of dread rose within him. His fate divine ability pulsed with repeated warnings of danger. The Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror. As expected of a spirit treasure personally bestowed by the Supreme Yang Dao lineage and approved by an immortal, its might is likely the pinnacle among spirit treasures. Kai Buzi understood all too well how terrifying this object was. The fame of the Chunyi Dao ancestor Jiquan was largely built upon the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror. It was no exaggeration. When Jiquan had been granted this object, the Lord personally said it had the bearing of a Dharma relic and should be nurtured carefully. Thus, Jiquan had bound his life to it and nourished it day and night with divine abilities. Although the ancestor had fallen later without breaking through to the Golden Core Realm, and the mirror lost its chance to become a Dharma relic, its power was likely unrivaled within the Supreme Yang Dao lineage in an era without Dharma relics. Taoist Master Fuxuan rose respectfully and performed a salute before holding the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror in his hands. Kai Buzi cast a slight glance and saw the surface ripple like water. It seemed to contain a world within where a Gyukin rested. An incense table was set before it and a bamboo grove behind, but everything was faint and indistinct. Taoist Master Fuxuan raised the spirit treasure. Kai Buzi cautiously stepped back and lit up 4 divine abilities in his hands without hesitation. Blue-gray wove through surging green-white energy. Taoist Master Fuxuan's expression gradually grew solemn as he extended his senses. How could this not be our Tao lineage? The Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror senses not the slightest impurity or anomaly. More than that, it carries a faint sense of familiarity. What else could it be but our lineage? Zhe family's pristine water Tao lineage, the Chaogui hidden form, originated from ancestor Jiquan. It had been passed down orally by an immortal. After Jiquan achieved great accomplishment, he had deliberately extracted this Tao and left it for later generations. When Du Qing later attained the Tao, no one in the Zhe family cultivated pristine water anymore, so there was no reason for it to have spread outside. Kai Buzi has already cultivated it to completion. He must possess the method. If he had obtained it from some predecessor, he would never come to me of his own accord. This so-called opportunity seems to be real. Taoist Master Fuxuan felt both joy and worry in his heart. After all, this concerned the Tao collection of ancestor Jiquan. Though he was certain it was his own Tao lineage, Taoist Master Fuxuan showed little on his face and spoke casually. "Fellow Taoist, you have fine fortune and temperament. There is no doubt you cultivated it yourself. It is only that this matter." Kai Buzi raised his brows and replied, "Is it the Tao lineage of your gate?" The question struck directly at the heart of the matter and left Taoist Master Fuxuan no room to evade. He could only grit his teeth and nod. "It is." Kai Buzi lowered his gaze without speaking. Taoist Master Fuxuan smiled bitterly inwardly. Their Tao lineage could not be allowed to spread, thus he had to say, "This opportunity." Kai Buzi lifted his head cautiously as his eyes narrowed. He said, "If I obtain this opportunity, it is not merely a matter of taking benefits." He glanced at Taoist Master Fuxuan and said lightly, "I do indeed require the assistance of Chunyi Dao. I need a direct blood descendant of your family to willingly help me, but the location of the opportunity cannot be revealed to your Purple Mansion Realm cultivators." Taoist Master Fuxuan frowned as Kai Buzi said frankly, "Your gate holds the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror. If the location is disclosed and you go together, you will inevitably besiege me with the spirit treasure. I do not wish to be injured, nor do I wish to fall." Taoist Master Fuxuan hesitated to speak, but Kai Buzi continued, "I know that the most precious thing within this hidden opportunity is a supreme yin spirit item. Let us do this. Your family sends one direct descendant cultivator with me. I will place a spirit treasure in your family's custody as collateral. Once the opportunity is opened, I will take the spirit item and use what is within to redeem the spirit treasure. Your direct descendant who accompanies me can also witness what lies inside, making it easier to divide the spirit item afterward. Taoist Master Fuxuan knitted his brows tightly and remained silent, unable to find any major flaws in this proposal. After all, the Zhe family had no shortage of direct descendants, and there were even more whose Daos were already cut off. They were not afraid he would harm one of them. He pondered for a long time. He understood that Kai Buzi feared the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror. He would likely never allow the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators of Chunyi Dao to accompany him. The orthodox Dao's reputation meant little to a man as wary as Kai Buzi. After some time, he finally nodded slightly and said softly, "One spirit treasure is not enough. Our man will bring the mind-clarifying talisman of the precious pagoda. He will not fear deception by divine abilities." Kai Buzi hesitated and replied, "I will add one more spirit artifact, no more than that. This is not some grotto heaven or secret realm." Taoist Master Fuxuan nodded and thought inwardly, "I should first ask for the Chaogui water-seeking method in his possession. It was obtained by chance, but it might be more complete than our version. A careful look would serve as double assurance." Before he could speak, Kai Buzi waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist, what you say makes sense, but I am not of Chunyi Dao. I cannot perceive the transformations of the Supreme Circuit Spirit Mirror. You may understand it, but the opportunity lies in my hands. How could I not guard against you?" "What do you mean by that?" Taoist Master Fuxuan frowned, clearly confused. Kai Buzi continued, "The opportunity only says it requires the bloodline of one who cultivates this Dao. How do we know whether this Chaogui hidden form is truly the same as yours of Chunyi Dao? Who knows whether Chunyi Dao truly has that standing? If it is not, I bring your man there and fail to open it, return empty-handed, and your sect immediately denies everything. At worst, one minor direct descendant dies. You swallow my spirit treasure and spirit artifact and profit greatly." A sharp intake of breath sounded. Only then did Taoist Master Fuxuan understand. He drew in a cold breath, as though just realizing such a scheme was possible. A chill rose in his heart even as he sighed and laughed in rebuke. "That is something only you, Kai Buzi, would come up with." He turned and ordered, "Cheheng, bring the Chaogui water-seeking method." Taoist Master Cheheng had listened all along and now looked eager as he hurried away. Kai Buzi drank tea calmly. After a short while, Cheheng returned carrying a golden jade slip. He opened it with a secret technique and handed it to Taoist Master Fuxuan. "Please." Taoist Master Fuxuan looked confident. Kai Buzi took it casually and read from beginning to end with a frown. After a full 15 minutes, having found nothing amiss even after repeated scrutiny, he finally spoke with relief. "As expected, it is sound." The two Taoist masters beside him relaxed slightly. Kai Buzi returned the jade slip and waved his hand. "Please send your man up. Older is fine, but not s. Old that he cannot walk. He will not withstand too much hardship." Clearly, rather than send one whose Dao was severed, it was better to send an elder near the end of his lifespan. Taoist Master Fuxuan signaled to Cheheng, who soon brought an old man forward. The elder bowed to the three and said in a hoarse voice, "Zhe Jianquan greets the three Taoist masters." "Why is it him?" Taoist Master Fuxuan appeared somewhat reluctant. Cheheng said softly, "Many cultivate the Chaogui water-seeking method, but he is the oldest among them. When we mentioned the matter, he insisted on coming, saying he has only a few years left and might as well contribute to the gate." A sigh escaped Taoist Master Fuxuan. He waved his hand and transmitted through divine ability. "Judging by his account and the divine ability he displayed, this matter is likely genuine. It is only a single trip, though it will make the old man travel in vain." Kai Buzi appeared unconcerned, holding his cup and drinking silently. He glanced at Zhe Jianquan kneeling below without surprise. He was far too shrewd. He had already calculated in secret that it would almost certainly be this man who would accompany him. He has only a few years left anyway. When he falls and you return from the outer heavens, can you make a dead Zhe family blood descendant speak? Even if you could, you would have to turn the Zhe family upside down. Let us see whether Tei would tolerate that. Even as the thought flashed through his mind, his expression remained leisurely. He laughed inwardly, Chunyi Dao. Whether Fuxuan or Cheheng, they are no fools, but those who cling to rules and ancient orthodoxy cannot outplay me. As for that supreme yin spirit item, it cannot be spared. The Chaogui water-seeking method has now fallen into my hands. All Kai Buzi's maneuvering had been for the Chaogui water-seeking method. Even if he ultimately had to part with the spirit item brought down from the heavens, it would not matter. Now, seeing the man delivered before him, he raised his hand and turned it lightly. Two objects appeared upon the jade table. One was a small cauldron of clear bluish sheen, shrouded in a layer of gray light. Runes coiled around it. The moment it settled upon the table, an atmosphere of damp rainfall spread outward. The rain-viewing precious cauldron. The other was a string of dark bluish-black prayer beads. Each bead looked as though it had been formed from condensed pool water, plump and gleaming as if they would burst at a single touch. Ink jade. Taoist Master Fuxuan hesitated to speak. He glanced at the spirit sword at Kai Buzi's waist used for casting arts and sighed. You emptied the azure pond sect dry. Kai Buzi smiled faintly. Having obtained the Chaogui water-seeking method, his mood had clearly improved. He replied, what should be taken, I will not spare a single piece. What should not be touched, I will leave entirely. Chapter 1383, Retrieving the Item, II. Moongai's Lake. The blazing sun hung overhead as Zhaijing Mountain shone with brilliance. It was the place where Taoist Master Zheijing had made his breakthrough. Gardenia blossoms covered the mountain year-round, never fading. When they bloomed all at once, the mountain dazzled like snow. A white-robed Taoist master sat cross-legged atop a jade pillar amid the falling gardenia petals drifting like rain. The heavenly light over the entire mountain range brightened and dimmed with his breathing. From time to time, purple flames circled his body, yet they did not scorch the white blossoms drifting across the ground. After an unknown span of time, the Taoist master exhaled sharply. Fierce winds swept across the mountain. The sounds of galloping hooves, clashing armor, and war drums thundered together. Golden armored figures marched across the slopes, filling the mountain with radiant brilliance. Li Ziming slowly opened his eyes, and the heavenly light at the center of his brows gradually withdrew. The heaven-venerating gate is complete. The perfection of the heaven-venerating gate perfected had increased its power severalfold. Its suppressing force had grown ever more formidable. It had always excelled in suppression among divine abilities of its kind. Now, when the gate resounded, even Chilu might not escape. The strength of its golden armor and golden robes had grown much stronger, yet it was too specialized. No one would use Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators to encircle and slaughter a Purple Mansion realm, so it rarely found practical use. Only in situations like Yehui's South Chu waters, which also manifested into countless forms, could it provide assistance. Aside from that, the purple flames of the heaven-venerating gate had finally improved in power. Yet Bright Yang was not fire virtue. It still could not compare to the profound fire of the Three Phases Guard and remained secondary to it. Still, none of that was critical, WH. What mattered was that Li Ziming had brought this divine ability to its utmost limit and fully refined it into the Shenyang Mansion. He could now begin cultivating his second divine ability, Sovereign in Peril. His spiritual sense sank into the Shenyang Mansion. The heavenly light representing the heaven-venerating gate had withdrawn into a corner, leaving more space to refine other divine abilities. The talisman seed rested gently in the center, emitting a faint, cool glow. Though far less radiant than the heaven-venerating gate, it carried a sharp and unshakable authority. Li Ziming glanced at it once and withdrew. As he looked beyond his secluded cave, he saw that 1 large and 6 small jade talismans had been hung just outside, indicating that a year and 6 months had passed. There were no warning signs. Clearly, the family had remained stable over the past year and more. He felt at ease and took a jade slip from his sleeve. It was the scripture of the Bodyguarding Tiger Pass. The scripture of the Bodyguarding Tiger Pass was only a 4th-grade technique. Though it would count as a direct lineage art of an immortal sect outside, it was nothing special to the present Li family. Even more so in the days of the Wei's Li Celestial Dynasty at its height, the name itself showed it was not a core imperial technique, but one meant for generals stationed at the borders. Li Ziming had long studied this technique. It lacked the overwhelming grandeur of crushing others by sheer momentum. Instead, it carried the bearing of fighting through life and death, forcing the enemy with martial power when trapped in desperate straits. His attainments in Bright Yang were already profound. Though he had never seen true imperial techniques, he could discern much. The scripture of the Bodyguarding Tiger Pass emphasized injuring others through force rather than protecting oneself. He nodded inwardly as he thought, it was meant for the border. One charges forward and slaughters. There is no need for many life-preserving measures. A general must be prepared to trade life for life. Fortunately, it is a body divine ability. That is not bad. With the heaven-venerating gate already excelling in suppression, a stronger emphasis on offense suits me well. He paused slightly and slipped a jade box from his sleeve that contained Profound Pass Crimson Fire Qi. This spiritual qi had to be gathered from a Profound Pass personally established by a Bright Yang cultivator. The pass required at least 200 years of history. Fortunately, it did not require a great desert. The Qi family had been unable to cultivate it in earlier years. It was only after constructing such a pass on Changzhou Island that they gradually gained the means to practice this technique. The requirements were harsh. A profound pass occupied considerable land and was not easy to construct. The Cui family had few of them and scarcely enough for themselves. When they had sent the technique, they gave Li Ziming only a single portion. The Li family had no surplus either. Thus, no one in the family had cultivated this method for many years. Having already formed one divine ability at the Purple Mansion realm, forging an immortal foundation was no longer as complicated as in Foundation Establishment realm. One had to cultivate 6 cycles during the embryonic breathing realm. Now, with no immortal foundation occupying his Dharma body, he could condense them freely. Moreover, drawing qi was no longer as troublesome as in childhood. At Li Ziming's current speed, what once took 3 to 5 years in the embryonic breathing realm would now require only 3 to 5 days. Once the 6 cycles were condensed, he could ingest the spiritual qi and easily step into the qi cultivation realm. Advancing from the qi cultivation realm to the Foundation Establishment realm would not be so simple, yet with a Purple Mansion realm Dharma body, he could cultivate boldly and consume pills without restraint. It would likely take only 2 or 3 years. It would not be difficult to progress through the Foundation Establishment realm with divine ability assisting him. Though there was a chance of failure, a custom-tailored essence-gathering pill would immediately form the Immortal Foundation. Cultivating the Immortal Foundation for Sovereign in Peril was likewise far easier. Like the Qi cultivation realm, it could be completed in 5 to 10 years. Once perfected, it could be moved into the Shenyang Mansion and formed into a divine ability according to the method. In theory, this Immortal Foundation could become a divine ability within 10 years at the fastest. This was undoubtedly a terrifying speed, yet Li Ziming had rarely heard of a Purple Mansion realm cultivator forming a divine ability in 10 years. Even the fastest seemed to take 20 years. The difficulty lay in the fact that the Shenyang Mansion already housed one divine ability, pushing another immort. Al Foundation into it would be far harder. If it failed, though the Purple Mansion realm Dharma body would not suffer grievous injury, the Immortal Foundation would be ruined. It would mean 10 years or more of effort washed away. Each time an Immortal Foundation was pushed into the Shenyang Mansion, even if it failed, the residual profundity would adjust the position of the existing divine ability and make them more compatible. Perhaps the second attempt would have a higher chance of success, yet repeated failures were tormenting. At this point, Li Ziming almost immediately reached another conclusion. If one suffers grievous injury during this period, and the Kihai acupoint is pierced, though it can be reshaped at will, the Immortal Foundation within would likely be destroyed as well. No wonder these Purple Mansion realm cultivators avoid fighting and prefer to resolve matters through maneuvering. As for Purple Mansion realm rogue cultivators of the Eastern Sea, who must repeatedly cultivate immortal foundations, they have likely spent decades or even nearly a century. If even forming one divine ability is this difficult, what if the Shenyang Mansion already contains 2 or 3? Would it not be nearly impossible? No wonder some Purple Mansion realm cultivators remain stuck for 100 years. He lowered his brows. A name flashed through his mind. The profound method of continuation. Whoever devised this method was a genius. No wonder everyone flocks to it. For a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, it is an immense convenience. On one side, you cultivate an immortal foundation within your body. On the other, you raise a talented medicine human. When the time comes to break through, refine him into a pill and ingest it. It is as if you gain an extra chance to nurture a divine ability from nothing. That saves 10 or 20 years of effort. Who would not be tempted? Who could remain unmoved? Even those who were not tempted at first, once they were stuck at a bottleneck for 10, 20, even 100 years, could they truly resist? Chapter 1384, Turning Glows into Mountain Eye. Li Ziming was secretly alarmed and began to ponder. The rumors say that one must raise medicine humans for many years and nurture them with one's aura. That may be somewhat difficult for rogue Purple Mansion realm cultivators, but it is far too simple for a sect. They could prepare 8 or 10 at a time. It would be even easier if the subject is of humble origin, if it is a clan disciple. Then a single order claiming reassignment to the Outer Sea or dispatch to the southern border would be more than sufficient. One could break into the Great Void midway, swallow it in a single gulp, and never return for years. Who would ever know? Even if the method has limitations and cannot cultivate 8 or 10 at once, as long as there are 1 or 2, one could still attempt a breakthrough since they were not cultivated by oneself in the first place. It would at least be an additional safeguard. And using this profound method of continuation to break through in divine abilities, what reasoning lies behind that? Li Ziming did not have the profound method of continuation on hand for reference. With his current cultivation and insight, he could only calculate the benefits of seizing another's immortal foundation to advance his cultivation. Yet all of that was premised on possessing a Purple Mansion realm cultivation method to begin with. Without such a method, even if one pushed the immortal foundation up to Shenyang, would one not simply be left staring helplessly? The true effect of continuation likely hinges upon a crucial key point. As Taoist master Yuansu once said, one must use many Purple Mansion realm spirit items as assistants. Only then can the method truly achieve its effect. Moreover, the profound method of continuation varies from house to house. Each lineage has its own approach. Chengxi claimed he was too lofty in his youth to use it. I doubt that. Perhaps he only said so to draw closer to me. In truth, he likely had no particularly effective method at all. Li Ziming remembered Chengxi's words from back then with perfect clarity, but I knew nothing of this Tao, relying solely on my own clumsy research, and everything failed in the end. I could only accept them as guest cultivators. That was Chengxi's exact wording. This method could be used freely in Kai Wei's hands, yet in his hands, it yielded nothing even after 100 years. That is simply the gap between Tao lineages. When Kai Wei sought out Sen Lufu to refine pills back then, it was likely for the same reason. And in those days, Chengxi's Tao lineage was truly in decline. Naturally, he possessed no superior methods worth mentioning. The only respectable techniques he had, the divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire, and the profound light mountain chasing scripture, have now both fallen into my family's hands. Li Ziming would neither seek out nor easily obtain the profound method of continuation. At most, if he chanced upon it someday, he might casually glance at it to resolve a lingering doubt. With a quiet sigh, he carefully reviewed everything in his mind. Taoist master Yuansu died without cultivating further, so he certainly never used it. Yuanxiu definitely did not have it in his early years. As for his final technique in later life, that is harder to say. As for Yuanwu, I have heard nothing. Li Ziming's brows relaxed. At last he had gained insight, and the conjecture in his heart gradually took full shape. No wonder. Yehui possesses 3 divine abilities, while Chengxiu is a grand Taoist master. 8 or 9 out of 10 Purple Mansion realm rogue cultivators of this world had incomplete Tao lineages. The profound method of continuation could significantly shorten the time required for breakthroughs, yet even if they possessed an excellent method, they lacked a Purple Mansion realm cultivation technique. Like Zhugong, they could only rely on the continuation effect to break through, but doing so brought substantial subsequent costs, which would likely be difficult to gather. On the other hand, those Purple Mansion realm cultivators of Jiangnan's supreme Yang Dao lineage, who hold relatively complete Tao lineages and abundant resources, either demanded strict perfection in their divine abilities or adhered to the orthodox Tao. Since they lived in stability without formidable enemies pressing them, everyone accommodated them. They were unwilling to shorten time by lowering themselves through the use of another's immortal foundation. As a result, they often become grand Taoist masters with 1 or 2 incomplete final techniques. Only then do they require continuation, which instead makes their cultivation appear slower. Of course, there were also figures like Kai Wei within the supreme Yang Dao lineage. However, his actions eventually labeled the Azure Pond sect as a demonic sect. Only rogue cultivators of the Outer Sea like Chengxiu, Yehui, and Gu Shentong, who by chance obtain complete Tao lineages and perhaps even possess exceptionally refined profound methods of continuation, could act without restraint. Their cultivation speed then surged dramatically upward. In those days, everyone called them geniuses, but once they reached the Purple Mansion realm, one could see it was not fate at work. There were reasons behind it. He let out a breath. Just as he was about to begin 6 cycles of cultivation, he reconsidered. Still uneasy, he slowly closed his eyes and stirred his spiritual sense. After a moment, a court guard ascended the steps, bowed respectfully, and reported, "Congratulations, Taoist master." The family head instructed that he was to request an audience once you emerged from seclusion. "Let him come up," Li Ziming gave the order. He had been concerned about the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers atop the viewing pavilion. Fortunately, he had already refined this ancient Dharma artifact. The distance was not great, and with his bright Yang divine ability linked to the Great Void, a quick calculation at his fingertips revealed that the refinement of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was nearing completion, lacking only a final 10th. Joy surged within him. He had intended to summon Chu Minglian to report and inquire about the details, but since Li Jianqian had already sent word ahead, he decided to hear him out first. Soon Li Jianqian arrived, bowed before the steps, and said respectfully, "Congratulations, ancestor, on the great completion of your divine ability." Naturally, Li Jianqian could not tell whether his divine ability had truly reached completion. It had simply been arranged in advance that this seclusion was for perfecting his divine ability. Every time Li Ziming emerged from a retreat, someone would congratulate him on its completion. It was nothing more than polite words, and he was used to it. The young man in crimson continued concisely. Granduncle, Lord Rosy Glows of the Celestial Pavilion, has returned from the outer sea. He is currently upon the lake and requests an audience with you, Taoist Master. Brother Zijai has returned. Li Ziming was overjoyed and rose at once, saying, "Why has he not been invited in? No, I shall go receive him myself." The Taoist master dispersed into light, traversed the great void, and flew out over the lake in the blink of an eye. Looking ahead, he saw the pavilion master in embroidered robes riding upon rosy clouds. He hurried forward with a smile. "Brother Zijai." Li Zijai smiled and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Taoist master." Li Ziming pulled him along toward the mountains, sighing with emotion. Taoist master, what kind of Taoist master? It is Taoist masters who grow heartless. We are brothers. Third brother, do not put on such formalities, it makes us seem distant. Li Zijai descended alongside him. After all these years, he still carried that air of elegance and nobility, though long experience in high office had lent him a quiet authority. He smiled and said, "You have truly cultivated a divine ability. As your brother, I am the happiest of all. I call you Taoist master willingly and with confidence. Once the word is spoken, it is clear that our family now has a purple mansion realm cultivator." Li Ziming laughed heartily. He had been rushing about for years and had scarcely found time to see his brother. At this moment, he was filled with emotion and said, "Has something happened at Splintered Island?" Li Zijai shook his head and said softly, "After so many years, what could have happened? My cultivation has been unable to advance for many years. I am thinking of making a move. I cultivate the Dawn Dew Gathering technique. Though it belongs to the Azure Pond sect Dao lineage, it was left behind by a member of the Kai family, or rather obtained by a Kai ancestor. It was already complete when it was acquired. Although it has been refined for over 500 years, its core spell remains that transmitted by the Taoist who founded it. That Taoist left no name but cultivated in the region of Xia Mountain. Many years ago, Lingu Xia also practiced this technique. I asked the Lingu family. He later went to Xia Mountain as well and disappeared. Either he went seeking an opportunity, or he has entered seclusion to break through to the Purple Mansion realm. Li Ziming nodded gravely, filled the teacups, and said softly, "As for the Heavenly Glow Dao lineage, I inquired earlier in the Eastern Sea with Supreme Yang and 9 mounds. I fear it will not be easily obtained." Li Ziming had not neglected to consider Li Zijai's situation. He had asked specifically when he had been at 9 mounds. One was a representative of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, while the other 9 mounds of the Outer Sea. Yet, both were evasive when speaking of this lineage. Lingdu had been somewhat tactful, but Hufu had shaken his head outright. He brought up the matter and said somewhat indirectly, "The meaning from both lineages is that, although the two places appear different, they are in fact the domain of a single party." He referred to Xia Mountain and Nuoxia. One was the resting place of Heavenly Glow, the other its beginning and end. In the words of these two great Dao lineages, both belonged to the territory of majestic light gathering the glow. Chapter 1385, Turning Glows into Mountain, II. Li Zijai hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I know, heavenly glow pervades the skies. There is nowhere that is not someone else's territory. Earlier, I worried about the family and could not leave. There were no great wars in the Eastern Sea and Taoist Master Q who kept me behind to prepare for the Southern Sea. Now the Southern Sea has been divided among the various houses, and the Buddhist cultivators have withdrawn. I am no longer greatly needed. If I do not go now, there may not be another opportunity in the future. My status, after all, is far from ordinary." Li Ziming fell silent. His elder brother was right. No matter what, he was still a cultivator of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage, and clearly could not arrange his own affairs at will. Ningguan allowing him to attempt a breakthrough was already out of regard for Li Ziming's face. If anything were to arise in the future, Li Zijai, who lacked a Purple Mansion realm cultivation technique, would have to continue running about for the Supreme Yang Dao lineage without end. He would never know peace. Li Zijai was not like Li Kuai and the others. His ties with the Supreme Yang Dao lineage and with Ningguan were not especially strong. Should there be any change in the future, or perhaps even without any change at all, this single chess piece named Li Zijai could unwittingly drag Li Ziming into the mire. Seeing that his brother had grasped the implication, Li Zijai nodded subtly and changed the subject. As for the Rainbow Mist Dao, it stands apart from Yin and Yang and the 5 virtues. It is not the 12 essences or the ancient classifications. Prime magnetism and thunder cannot stir it. Suoma Blood Fiend cannot invade it. It abides at the height of the world between water and fire. Even the bright Yang heavenly light cannot behold where it stands, and even the supreme shaman awakened star cannot hear it. Its power is immense and its marvels beyond restraint. Why then are there so few who cultivate it? Li Ziming remained silent and listened as his brother continued. First, the cultivation technique is rarely seen, and rogue cultivators cannot obtain it. Second, even a power such as the Azure Pawn sect that acquires it will not cultivate it themselves. At most, they would cast it off to some minor outsider. Even then, they must worry that once a Purple Mansion realm cultivator falls, it will become difficult to control. At that time, not a single one of the four great houses of the Azure Pawn sect touched it. Even earlier figures such as Yuan, Yu, Yang, Zio, and Lingu of Mount Yue, none cultivated it. When I originally sought this Dao lineage from my master, it was precisely for absolute security. Now, this is the price of that security. After all, my master never expected that I could ever make it to the Purple Mansion realm. Without the ambitions I hold now, Rainbow Mist would indeed have been the safest choice. The middle-aged man's expression grew complicated as he set down the jade cup. Majestic earth manifests as mountains upon the land and as rosy glows in the heavens. What is called heavenly glow is none other than majestic light. Majestic light once stood alongside heavenly light, magnetic light, and treasure light among the lights of the world. Now it stretches across the sky without end, unbroken throughout the year. At this point, Li Zijai dared not continue. He took out a jade slip from his sleeve, placed it gently upon the table, and said softly, "These many years at the Azure Pawn sect in Spleetard, I have read so many volumes of the Tao collection. None were particularly precious, but after reading hundreds and thousands of them, there are always some gains. I gained many marvelous methods and refined several spell arts beyond my predecessors, yet none are of great use to the family. Only one spell remains of value. It is called the merging and dividing art of majestic glows. It was an ancient art obtained together with the glazed pagoda of unrestrained boundary. After obtaining this art, I realized it was as profound as transforming separation into union, yet its limitations were great. Over the years, I gradually improved it until it took its present form. This art intends to refine light into majestic earth, descending from heaven to earth, turning glows into mountains." Li Ziming was faintly shaken and asked, "Does this offer a chance at liberation?" Li Zijai laughed softly and shook his head. He replied, "I do not possess that much ability. If I had that level of attainment, I would not be troubled here. This art, however, will be of use to you. It can transform glows into majestic earth. Heavenly glow is abundant across the world. There are many spirit items of that type, yet their uses are limited. If you hold this art, you may attempt to convert them into majestic earth spirit items." Li Ziming showed little joy. Instead, his expression was complicated. His brother clearly harbored ambitions toward the Purple Mansion realm. Being confined to Spleetard Island for so many years had bound him for far too long. They met each other's gaze. After a moment of silence, Li Ziming lowered his head and asked, "If you go to Xia Mountain, do not act rashly. Without a cultivation technique, be cautious when attempting to break into the Purple Mansion realm." "I understand." Li Zijai smiled and shook his head as he said, "There is one more matter. The glazed pagoda of unrestrained boundary that I obtained from various cultivators was not merely to add to the family's foundations. There is something even more important within." Li Ziming immediately cast him a questioning look. His brother continued, "Taoist Master Yunxiu had seen this item. At that time, he already knew he would certainly die, and he no longer hoped you would join the Azure Pawn sect. He wished instead to accumulate merit. Unable to find your whereabouts, he secretly bestowed his favor upon me. He left one instruction. The glazed pagoda of unrestrained boundary itself is not important. The key lies in the spirit items within. On the surface, they appear to be only Foundation Establishment realm objects, but at the very bottom, there is a Purple Mansion realm spirit item. That spirit item is the Sky Unrestrained Boundary Stone. It has long since vanished from the world. If the family ever reaches dire straits, this Dharma artifact can be shattered to extract that Purple Mansion realm spirit item." Li Ziming suddenly understood. He let out a long sigh. "Brother." Li Zijai shook his head and said softly, "Senior Yunxiu hoped that one day, if Si Yuanli were to break through and face hardship from someone, we might lend a hand." This matter left no written record, no oath, and no binding agreement. Purple Mansion realm items are, after all, precious. I feared mishap along the way and did not lightly tell others. Taoist Master, you may simply hear it for yourself." Li Ziming nodded. Li Zijai took a sip of tea and looked up. The Yang family's ambitions are vast, not confined to a single sect or gate. Who knows what the future will hold? Cheng Huai and his mother are safest and most suited to remain at Spleetard. As for Zhuliuo, he can serve as a minor pillar, but he is not one to shoulder the cauldron. Let him live his life in peace. He sat down. His teacup, Li Ziming hesitated, but he ultimately explained the matter of the Dharma sword. Li Zijai sighed and said, "These matters have burdened the family." He rose to his feet with a smile. "These cultivation techniques and spell arts that I have researched myself, I leave to the family as a safeguard. May our descendants no longer need to cultivate heavenly glow from this day forward." Chapter 1386, Golden Chi Soaring into the Heavens I. Heavenly light blazed brilliantly, and flames roared fiercely upon the viewing pavilion. Chu Minglian, dressed in red, stood in the middle. He was completely absorbed as he controlled the radiant fire. Chu Minglian had refined quite a number of Dharma artifacts in his life. He had originally forged Li Xuanfeng's famous Dharma artifact, White Lightning. Although its later advancement had largely relied on the monarch calling command Golden Talisman, it had still greatly boosted his reputation. This spirit embryo was even more unprecedented, since it had surpassed the scope of a Dharma artifact. For a cultivator skilled in artifact refinement, it was an immense honor and allowed him no room for the slightest lapse. Li Ziming saw his elder brother off from Moongaze, then rode a streak of light down onto the platform. Chu Minglian hurriedly bowed and said, "Congratulations." Li Ziming waved his hand and cut him off. While inspecting the spirit embryo within the flames, he asked, "How is the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers progressing?" Chu Minglian hurriedly offered his congratulations. "Congratulations, Taoist master. Everything is proceeding normally. Although my skill is not refined enough to complete this effortlessly, Taoist master's spiritual essence is of excellent quality. It not only makes up for my shortcomings, but has also elevated the very foundation of the spirit embryo to a higher level." Li Ziming nodded. Though he was not proficient in artifact refinement, he at least possessed the divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire. He saw through the Dharma artifact with a single glance. He took note of the vast crimson glow within, grand and imposing, and thus nodded. "You have worked hard." Chu Minglian repeatedly said he did not dare accept such praise. Li Ziming glanced to the side to see a white-robed female cultivator carrying a sword descend from the pavilion. Though her appearance was not striking, she carried herself with poise. Her skin was like congealed jade, and she appeared all the more graceful without adornment. She saluted Li Ziming, her voice crisp as snow as she smiled and said, "Greetings, Taoist master." Li Ziming was somewhat surprised. After taking a brief look, he nodded and said, "Good, your breakthrough was indeed swift." This woman was none other than Li Xinghen, who had been in seclusion for her breakthrough. Xinghen had entered seclusion at the founding of Locust Soul Hall, and more than 4 years had passed. It was truly fast. It only took Li Ziming a moment to understand why. Xinghen cultivates Jade True. With the true monarch returning to position, this is an era when Jade flourishes across the world. She also encountered Dwelling Heart that charges profundity, benefiting both ancient merging Dao and the immortal Dao. It is favorable for seclusion and breakthrough. It is therefore nothing strange. She had likely come to the viewing pavilion to take over her shift. Li Ziming beckoned her closer with evident delight. Looking at the treasured sword on her back, he rose upon light and sighed. "Good, good. The old elder once mentioned that with Jade True returning to position, you were the least among the younger generation entering seclusion for breakthroughs to worry about. Yet only after seeing you in person could I truly feel at ease." There was truly no one among the Zhuang generation, aside from Li Xiaowei, one who could act as the main pillar. Even having one person of outstanding strength would suffice. Li Xinghen smiled slightly and saluted. "I cultivated the Jade True Dao unification technique and have achieved True Dao unification. A point of white radiance rests within my Qihai acupoint. It is able to unite with the true essence of techniques and pursue the utmost in skill. It benefits talisman, pill, and artifact arts, as well as sword and blade craftsmanship. When cultivating spell arts, so long as the spell art is an escape spell or is cast through a Dharma artifact as medium, it becomes even more effortless to wield. The Immortal Foundation's support also brings unification with truth. Once engaged in battle, I grow increasingly attuned, and the clarity of my eyes allows me to break illusions and perceive subtle details. Now that true monarch Shangyuan had attained fruition attainment, True Dao unification was greatly strengthened, and was entirely different from what it had been in the Yu family of old. Li Xinghen suddenly looked puzzled as she see. "Antenude, there is only one point I have yet to understand, and I wish to seek instruction. This immortal foundation also carries a certain minor profundity. If I am subjected to a transformation art, not only is the duration of the transformation greatly extended, it also becomes much harder for others to see through it. It sounds rather like the Dao of the shamanic talisman Dao." Li Ziming led her up the mountain and nodded slightly. He had indeed learned quite a bit about this from Zhasheng and began to explain. Although Jade True has drawn closer to the immortal Dao due to the Lord's breakthrough, at its root it remains one of the 3 shamanic Daos, the 6-9 Jade True. Transformation is naturally part of it. He smiled and continued, "Quyen still knows some transformation arts, which are by no means useless. Moreover, the former Mount Yue state excelled in shamanic spell arts and was ferocious beyond measure. Though they have become obedient as lambs after 100 years of cultivation, the shamanic spell arts remain stored in the archives. If you have time to look through them, it may prove beneficial." Li Xinghen acknowledged, I will keep the Taoist master's teachings firmly in mind. Since he had met her, Li Ziming took the opportunity to ask, I have been in seclusion for more than a year. How are matters at home? Li Xinghen hurriedly said, I was not the only one who broke through. Jianglong's breakthrough took even less time. He entered seclusion later than I did, yet just as I emerged, he followed close behind with his own breakthrough. Recently, however, he accompanied Dharma protector Chen to the eastern shore. The eastern shore. As she spoke, Li Xinghen obediently poured tea for him. Li Ziming immediately deduced, that is nothing strange. The Lord in the north is currently experiencing the mortal world and even made around by the lakeside. There may well have been considerable benefit. Li Jianglong was in fact less familiar to him than Li Xinghen before him. Among Li Xiaowei's children, only Li Jianqian had the chance to meet him a few times. Li Ziming quickly shifted the topic and asked, Our family still bears the name of a sword immortal family. In earlier years we had some renown, but only a few mention it in the past 10 or 20 years. Scarcely anyone among the younger generation wield the sword. You stand out alone. This inheritance must not be severed. You must watch over it carefully. Li Xinghen acknowledged. Li Ziming continued, I asked you some years ago, but have you mastered threefold moonlight? Li Xinghen quickly replied, the sword immortal's legacy is profound and unfathomable. After many years of study, this junior has finally gained some progress. I mastered it several years ago. Li Xinghen removed the cold-edged blade from her back and gently drew the sword. A chill radiance flared from her. Moonbright sword light, large as a ship's sail, shone briefly in the air before dispersing. However, it was quickly followed by 3 agile streaks of light like stars. With no enemy present, they merely hovered about the blade. Though her sword Dao already surpassed the vast majority of sword cultivators, it still appeared immature compared with Li Ziming's 2 brothers. This display of threefold moonlight was elegant, yet carried too much of a craftsman's rigidity. Li Ziming quietly watched the sword light fade away. He glanced at Han Lin in her hand, lowered his head to sip tea, and said with a sigh, Good. After so many years, Han Lin has finally seen threefold moonlight once more. He changed the subject, saying, However, I once promised that if you mastered threefold moonlight, I would forge a Dharma sword of the Jade True Tao for you. I cannot break my word. Although Han Lin is extraordinary, it does not sufficiently accord with Jade True. Li Xinghen hurriedly saluted in thanks. Li Ziming then took a jade box from his sleeve and instructed, Chu Minglian happens to be by the lake, and the spirit embryo is nearly complete. This is a portion of the Foundation Establishment Realm's spirit item Minqui flower. Take it back to the family and exchange it for a Jade True treasure. Then ask the old elder to bring out the broken sword left after Yu Mujian cast his blade. Your blade may be refined with that. Chapter 1387, Golden Chi Soaring into the Heavens, II. Li Ziming didn't wait for Li Xinghen to say more. He sipped his tea and suddenly asked, I heard, Zhuang Cheng has a legitimate son, who seems to have some interest in you. How is the matter now? Li Xinghen seemed slightly uneasy as she answered, He sent over a Jade True spirit item when I broke through. However, it was very valuable, and I declined it. He remains at the eastern shore and often seeks me out to discuss sword techniques. I have accepted nothing more from him. Li Ziming raised a brow and asked, What do you think? Do you like him? Xinghen did not care much for marriage itself and simply answered, He seems deeply devoted to me, and the family considers him suitable. As for whether I like him, I cannot truly say. Yet he treats me exceedingly well. It is difficult not to feel some goodwill. If I cannot say I dislike him, then at this stage it seems only natural to proceed. After all, it is not right to keep him waiting. Li Ziming sipped his tea and looked at her in mild surprise, unsure how to advise her. He had heard from Li Xuanxuan that Zhuang Ping'ai possessed top-tier looks and decent innate ability. After a moment's thought, he said, This is not such a grave matter. If harmony fails with time, it may be discussed again. He poured more tea and said, Since you have made up your mind, I will have Jianqian give them a hint. Li Ziming was now a Purple Mansion realm Taoist master and had no need to consider whether Zhuang Cheng agreed. With a single command from him and a word from the Li family, even a famed figure of the desert like Zhuang Cheng would have to personally come from the west to the foot of Zhaijing Mountain and bow in thanks before Li Ziming. Li Xinghen quietly expressed her thanks. Li Ziming simply said, Cultivate diligently, do not concern yourself overly. He took up his brush and personally wrote several lines, instructing Chu Minglian to prepare the spirit embryo and refine the artifact for Li Xinghen. Only then did he dismiss his junior. Li Jianqian, who had been waiting at the foot of the mountain, came up. Li Jianqian bowed again and respectfully said, Taoist master, during your year-long seclusion, the Lord has already consolidated the north and nearly executed all the cultivators of Locust Soul Hall one by one. There were almost monthly phenomena over this past year, but they have now been eradicated entirely, root and branch. Li Ziming was not surprised and merely replied, "The arrangements on both sides were well made. So many cultivators wished to flee yet failed to escape. They were forced to remain in place and be slain by the Lord." Li Zhongqian respectfully said, "Taoist master speaks rightly. The last few leaders have all died, and the Lord has largely vented his anger. The remainder finally entertained thoughts of escape and scattered into the eastern sea. The Lord did not establish a force of his own, but instead elevated several families. He has even granted a few mountains to his trusted subordinates. The Lord has proclaimed himself the true successor of Miffin and distributed countless Dharma artifacts and artifact spirit items. Song Yunbai and Zhao Yuan have each gained benefits. Recently, there has also been a man under Zhao Yuan, using a false name. Privately, it is said that he is connected to Li Quantao." Li Ziming raised a brow as Li Zhongqian continued reporting. "As for the surrounding forces, many have died within the capital Immortal Dao. Guan Gongxia was nearly beaten to the point of falling. The territory of Chuanmiao Temple has been almost entirely ruined by Yeasa Chengmi. However, Yeasa Chengmi had already fled north by the time the Lord arrived. It is said the Lord now has intentions of heading north as well. It is also said that the Sidhu family of Golden Tang Gate has no one presiding over it at present, leaving only a group of low cultivation juniors overturning matters back and forth. In the end, they even began exchanging glances with several monks, and it is said those monks have been invited into the mountain gate." Li Ziming shook his head and sneered. "Currently, none of the major families bother with him. It is merely a group of ignorant lower cultivators below. It depends only on whether the Golden Feather sect chooses to intervene." He then asked the matter he cared about most, what of Master Beiyin? Li Zhongqian lowered his voice and replied, "I inquired for a long time without finding any traces. In the end, I repeatedly questioned the Zhuang family, then investigated several rogue cultivators, marking out several mountain ranges and examining them one by one. At last we determined a certain range. The rogue cultivators there recognized the description. It should be 50 kilometers north of the riverbank, west of Mount Tangdao. He's most likely there." Li Ziming nodded in satisfaction. This had nothing to do with divine ability or mana. It relied purely on information and manpower to investigate, which had saved him considerable effort. Li Zhongqian added, "However, such a mobilization has drawn observant eyes. Fortunately, the Dharma sword is in his hands, giving proper justification." He presented a jade slip with both hands. His current location, as well as several suspected but excluded sites, have all been recorded in case of contingencies. Li Ziming accepted it lightly. After hearing further about family affairs, he returned to the jade pillar, preparing to cultivate, yet just as he seated himself, the spirit Yule energy of Zhaijing Mountain surged like a tide. He abruptly opened his eyes, shock appearing upon his face. Within his spiritual sense, the Great Void was linked with the spiritual energy of reality. It was normally calm and steady, seldom undergoing major changes. Even when a foundation establishment realm breakthrough occurred, unless one was very near, the Great Void would only give the faintest indication. At this moment, however, the Great Void seemed struck by repeated shocks, turning into oceanic waves that surged southward in successive swells, rising into strange peaks before collapsing into valleys. What is this? An upheaval of the earth veins? Perhaps the fluctuation of spiritual energy within the mountains was not obvious, but Li Ziming saw something utterly extraordinary through the Great Void. Boom! A thunderous roar echoed across the sky. Li Ziming instantly traversed the Great Void and appeared upon the northern bank as he gazed northward. A pure golden radiance shot upward, thick as a mountain and rising straight into the heavens. In a heartbeat, the entire sky was covered in pure golden chi. Boom! An extremely terrifying tremor and roar erupted from the north. The golden chi lasted only for an instant, colliding with the clouds in the sky and transforming into autumn dew that fell drop by drop. Yet the soaring golden chi in the north did not cease. The earth shook and the mountains trembled. The Great Void quaked like raging waves, surging again and again from the north. Li Ziming rode upon heavenly light, his expression filled with disbelief as he thought, "A purple mansion realm cultivator has fallen, yet it does not quite seem so." He stepped forward and lightly crushed the jade talisman in his hand. Soon he found Ningguan not far away, likewise gazing northward. Her eyes too were filled with astonishment and faint shock. Upon seeing Li Ziming, Ningguan's eyes brightened and she said, "Congratulations, Zheajing." Li Ziming waved his hand and asked in confusion, "This is?" Ningguan's expression was complicated as she replied, "This scene is far from ordinary. The golden chi soaring into the sky is exceedingly pure. It must be connected to the purple mansion realm. Coupled with the upheaval of the earth veins, I fear, something has happened at Golden Tang Gate." Golden Tang Gate, Li Ziming had never considered that particular mountain gate. Only now did he connect the trembling earth veins with the surging golden chi, and realization struck him with horror. The Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation of Golden Tang. Exactly, Ningguan seemed somewhat at a loss too. Gazing at the scattered autumn rain in the north, she appeared momentarily unsure of herself. Clearly, this turn of events had exceeded her expectations. She said softly, "This is the shattering of the Golden Tang Gate's Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation. The mountain-guarding spirit formation established by Sidu Tang in those years, together with the one or two fine treasures at its core, have all sublimated at once. They first shook the earth veins, severing the foundation of the Grand Formation, and then transformed entirely into golden chi that surged into the sky. 3 generations of the Sidu family, father and son, both Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, once proclaimed the illustrious orthodoxy of Su State. The Golden Tang Dao lineage that stood peerless in glory is fated to be exterminated today." Chapter 1388, Heaven Whisker, I. Li Ziming raised his brows and looked north. The autumn dew was still falling in steady drops. He exchanged a glance with Ningguan and hesitated. "Shall we go take a look?" Ningguan nodded. "Indeed, such a great disturbance cannot escape the notice of Sword Gate and Ziyuqui. We would have to come sooner or later. There is little to fear in going." At this moment the great void trembled incessantly, stirred by dense golden chi that shot straight into the sky. It was hardly a smooth path, and Mount Tangdao was not far away. The two simply rode their divine abilities and arrived at a distant point from which the mountain could be seen in 2 steps. Mount Tangdao, with its undulating ridges and a main peak thrusting toward the heavens, was already completely enveloped in golden chi. Above it lay a dense expanse of white. It was neither cloud nor mist, but more like rolling smoke and sand, echoing one another and lingering without dispersing. The clouds in the sky had long since been dissolved, unable to transform the golden chi into autumn dew. Its rate of diffusion was far slower than its eruption. The white golden chi grew ever thicker as it rumbled from time to time. Faint streaks of prismatic light could be seen in the sky. Enormous golden bodies flickered in and out within the white chi in autumn dew one after another. At times, rays of light rose from the ground and ascended into the Buddhist land. Li Ziming steadied himself and watched, his expression troubled as he said in a low voice, "There is no doubt it is a Buddhist cultivator. The Golden Feather sect truly intends to ignore this." The destruction of the Golden Tang Gate could not have gone unnoticed by the Golden Feather sect. With Golden Feather sect's current prestige, unless it was by order of Luoxia, no Buddhist cultivator would dare tear down the Golden Tang Gate without a word. How could Li Ziming not understand? It had most likely been sold for a handsome price. Ningguan remained silent for a long while before speaking. "Sidu Hua once promised to give the mountain-dimming peak-moving cord to the Golden Feather sect, but my elders stopped the transaction from proceeding. Later, when you fought Chengxiao, I do not know what terms they reached in secret, but in the end that spirit artifact still went to the Golden Feather sect. Judging by the Golden Feather sect's attitude, Golden Tang Gate was of little use from that moment onwards. Now they even hand this mountain over to the Buddhist cultivator, abandoning a perfectly good Purple Mansion Realm formation and leaving it to these monks to smash apart. As for these Buddhist cultivators, a Purple Mansion Realm formation is precious no matter what. Even if it serves no use, would it not be better sold to some household? Why insist on this?" With Ningguan speaking thus, her meaning was obvious. Li Ziming understood inwardly. What other intention could there be? Golden chi surged skyward, blanketing Jiangbei. What they sought was nothing more than spiritual aura. Golden Feather sect rarely intervened in matters of spiritual aura. After all, they possessed their own grotto heaven, presided over by a true monarch of dewy metal of the metal virtue. Anyone who cultivated the orthodox metal virtue lineage of the Golden Feather sect could simply break through within that grotto heaven. Why stir up a great commotion in the outside world? Perhaps the Golden Feather sect was acting like this for the sake of their Taoist master Qiushui. While Li Ziming pondered this, Ningguan's gaze grew complicated as she said softly, "Yet the dwelling heart that charges profundity has always been advantageous through the ages. It can be considered quite good. Mount Tangdao being tossed about like this is hardly a good thing." Li Ziming frowned as he glanced at her. Ningguan stepped through the snow, drawing gradually closer, and he followed. When they were some distance away from the mountain and could clearly see the prismatic light and the Buddhist land, she finally stopped. Li Ziming swept his gaze over the scene and only then noticed something amiss. A glut of roiling black baleful chi had surged out of the mountain range, flowing along the hills like waves. The golden chi in the sky, with nowhere else to go, seemed drawn by something and began to descend drop by drop. For a time, white chi streamed like silk from heaven into the earth. Ningguan caught a drop of autumn dew and said, "Metal virtue cultivators have an incantation called Encounter Baleful Chi and Sink. When golden chi rests upon the mountain without cloud or mist, it cannot form the stern chi of autumn and winter. Thus it is drawn down by earthly baleful qi. Once it sinks, it transforms that baleful qi into prime magnetism. Now that the grand formation of Mount Tangdao has shattered and been uprooted entirely, it no longer even qualifies to become a sealed prohibition. What remains are earth veins riddled with holes. This is precisely the moment when earthly baleful qi surges outward. Upon meeting gold in a single night, it turns into prime magnetism. Her expression grew slightly dazed as she turned to look at Li Ziming. It is one of the three thunders of this age, the Origin Thunder. Li Ziming was briefly stunned. His own junior, Li Qiwen, cultivated the whole pill Dao. He had long since learned that this Dao feared converging water first, merging fire second, and prime magnetism third. If this expanse of golden qi were to sink, 300 years of golden tang accumulation would likely be enough to turn this mountain into treasured lands of prime magnetism. The earth veins and spiritual aura of all Jiangbei would change as a result. If Taoist master Qiushui was breaking through, why would the Golden Feather sect go to such lengths? Would that not be courting trouble for themselves? He quickly understood Ningguan's conflict and doubts and replied, if it is not the Golden Feather immortal sect, and yet no Taoist master of theirs appears to stop it. The golden qi in the north had already begun to sink on a large scale. What had once been fine threads linking heaven and earth now changed, as if the white qi in the sky had been pierced through. It poured down like a waterfall, drilling straight into the earth veins. Even from such a distance, Li Ziming could sense black and silver hues interweaving within the mountain range, a strange ore. Arose upward, the mountains beneath his feet trembled, and metal and stone quivered. So this is the power of prime magnetism. Just as this ore arose, the entire mass of golden qi suspended in the sky shattered with a crash. As if drawn by some force, it collapsed downward, turning Mount Tangdao entirely bright white. Ningguan still saw no cultivators from the Golden Feather sect, yet black qi thickened beside them. Taoist Master Qiuqi descended riding a divine ability, clad in a pitch-black Taoist robe, his expression dark. Even if Qiushui himself comes now, it will be useless. Unless a true monarch intervenes, no one can move it. His gaze slowly fell on the mountain range within the white qi as he said, it matters little that the Golden Tang Gate has fallen, but what Sidu Tang obtained back then was the Dao lineage of the ancient Heaven Whisker Gate. It cannot be discarded lightly. Even if the Buddhist cultivator has obtained the jade slip and can open it without difficulty, secrecy will be hard to maintain. It should be taken back. Now that Qiuqi had revealed himself, the prismatic light in the north could no longer remain calm. A streak of illusory radiance descended, condensing into a golden body before them. This golden body had 6 hands and 4 legs with 3 faces upon its head. One bared its teeth, while another wept in sorrow. All were painted with exquisite patterns. 4 arms held staff and cudgel, blade and sword, while the remaining pair pressed together before its chest. Its voice was benevolent. Nuzi greets the 3 fellow Taoists. Li Ziming frowned inwardly, while Qiuqi let out a cold laugh and said, you dawdled for so many years before the Great Desire Dao finally found a place for you, old thing. We just saw Pai Jia earlier, and now you have come as well. The Great Desire Dao and the Emptiness Dao have truly drawn close these past years. The Great Desire Dao again. When Li Ziming and Qiuqi had rescued Ningguan and the others, they had fought Zhelu and Daisy of the Emptiness Dao. That faction had sought his death. It was Pai Jia of the Great Desire Dao who had intervened at that time. Now another of the Great Desire Dao, Nuzi, had appeared. Qiuqi's words stemmed from that history. This Nuzi was clearly a Maha who had risen through the conflict between North and South. Though from the same batch as Daisy, he appeared much older and had waited many years. He did not grow angry and said calmly, I have merely lived a few more years and was fortunate to receive the Lord's promotion. I now cultivate under Lord Pai Jia. Hearing that I have had many dealings with southern cultivators, he sent me here. Our 2 Daos of Great Desire and Emptiness act under the command of the Dharma Master to eradicate the Golden Tang demonic gate that refines blood food. I wonder what instructions the Taoist masters might have. His tone was righteous and severe, bearing the demeanor of a proper cultivator, with none of the usual air of the 2 Daos. Li Ziming knew Qiuqi would not tolerate such words. Indeed, the black-robed man's expression only grew colder. How shameless! When Sidu Tang was at the height of his power, you said nothing. Now that the Golden Tang Gate is left with only 1 or 2 people, you stir up golden qi that soars to the heavens and autumn dew that spreads across the fields, wasting the climate, and call it demon eradication. Nuzi pressed his palms together and replied, at the very least, we remove harm for the people. Though Ningguan still harbored resentment toward the 2 paths, she hesitated when she sensed that a fight might break out. This matter harmed the interests of the Golden Feather sect. If the Golden Feather sect were willing to step forward and take the lead, Ningguan and the others would certainly be willing to assist. But there was nothing but silence, and no one could discern what dealings lay within. The supreme Yang Dao lineage thus had no legitimate grounds to act. Ningguan could only speak coldly. The Lord has already gone north, yet the Buddhist Dao still has the leisure to stir trouble in the south. No matter what, Golden Tang Gate was once a Dao lineage of the immortal Dao. How can it be exterminated without a word? It was at least an immortal Dao lineage, and Sidu Tang obtained an ancient cultivator inheritance. There is no reason for it to be lost outside. Unexpectedly, Nuzi burst into laughter and replied, "We have already made arrangements for the immortal Dao." Chapter 1389, Heaven Whisker, II. Nuzi raised his sleeve, and the Merciful One rode in from the north on prismatic light with a group of master monks. They suspended groups of nearly naked men and women, stripped bare, infants clutched in their hands and under their arms with their mana. When they arrived, the Merciful One stood broad-shouldered and sturdy, clad in gleaming golden armor. His features were upright, but his 4 eyes were fierce as he bowed, reporting to my lord, "The entire Sidu family has been brought." Li Ziming looked down and saw a crowd of Sidu family members below. Some had a little cultivation, but most were ordinary mortals. As they drew near and saw the 3 Taoist masters, hope flared in their eyes. They wept and wailed for mercy, kneeling within the prismatic light and kowtowing. Ningguan sighed deeply. Kueki frowned heavily, anger faintly rising. Whatever their faults, the Sidu family were descendants of a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Being captured was one thing, but to be stripped and humiliated like livestock was another. Had the Sidu family not produced so few decent people over the generations, Kueki might already have acted. Nuzi raised his sleeve again. It fluttered in the wind and expanded instantly. Jade slips and Dharma artifacts of all sizes poured out, piling into a mountain before the crowd. The Mahanuzi smiled and said, "We did not take much. Everything has been handed over to the supreme Yang Dao lineage." He said solemnly, "It is the command of the Dharma Master and cannot fail. We sincerely hope the supreme Yang Dao lineage does not intervene. If this matter comes to conflict, we cannot retreat." In truth, even if the true monarch had gone north, it would be difficult for the supreme Yang Dao lineage to cross the river and wage war upon the mountain against Buddhist cultivators allied with the Great Desire Dao and the Emptiness Dao. Unless Luing of Ziyukui acted, they would never make such a rash move. Yet the Buddhist side had still delivered both the Dao lineage and the people, revealing how urgently they wished to avoid mishap and how firmly they were resolved to hold Mount Tangdao. The will of the Dharma Master, is this aimed at the Golden Feather sect? Kueki did not answer. He placed 2 fingers before his lips and blew gently. A gray wind descended from the air, sweeping over the heads of the Sidu family cultivators. It transformed into pure black Taoist robes that fell and covered their naked bodies. When he saw the 3 ignore him, Nuzi tactfully waved his hand. The master monks followed the Merciful One into the wind, and they turned into prismatic light and retreated north. Li Ziming rode his divine ability slightly downward. Any among the Sidu family with backbone had likely already died. Those remaining trembled in fear at the sight of him, kowtowing without cease. They pushed their women forward by the sleeves and cried, "Taoist Master, spare us." In those years, it was all done by Sidu Mo. It has nothing to do with us. Li Ziming watched quietly, feeling something difficult to put into words. The Sidu family of former days, the Sidu family whose direct descendant could wipe out the Wan family merely by passing over the lake, now they have fallen into such a state. He simply stood quietly. Before him, a woman of the Sidu family, fair-faced and tear-streaked, crawled forward and kowtowed. She tried to seize the hem of his robe as if it were a lifeline, yet her hand, halted by fear, extended only halfway and hung uselessly in the air. Soon failing to grasp that fleeting chance, she was dragged back by her family members and kicked aside, replaced by another who knelt in front, weeping and kowtowing. Jiajing. Ningguan's gentle voice sounded by his ear. Only then did Li Ziming lift his head. He gave a faint, self-mocking smile as if nothing had happened and shook his head. How should these members of the Sidu family be handled? Kueki descended on his divine ability, briefly glanced over them, and said softly, "The Sidu family never had many elites. Now they have either been slaughtered or taken into the Buddhist land. Those left are mostly collateral branches or illegitimate lines. Even if 1 or 2 are of the main line, they were not valued. Does Jiajing have any thoughts?" Sidumo had a deep enmity with the Li family. As a cultivator of the great Ziyukui temple, Kueki clearly did not wish to see him embark on a massacre. It was rare for him to speak so many tactful words. Li Ziming sighed and said, "I have no great thoughts on it. The monks in the north are cunning. If any here truly bore enmity with my family, they would not have been spared. They would have been taken to the Buddhist land long ago. Sending these people over was deliberate. They hope I will slaughter them and cut the grass by the roots, so that those Sidhu family members in the Buddhist land may gain karmic destiny. Indeed, Ningguan smiled faintly, took a jade slip from her sleeve, and handed it to Li Ziming. These are the Sidhu family's secret techniques for lifting prohibitions. Most can be opened. I have heard Sidhu most secretly altered them in the past 2 years, but the main lineage likely knows as well. Ningguan placed the item in Li Ziming's hand. Clearly, Sidhu Ku's long imprisonment by the Li family had proven quite convenient. Li Ziming nodded and replied, once I sort through the various methods, I will send a portion to both households. Huiki lifted his sleeve and swept it to either side, dividing both people and objects into 3 portions. He drew one portion toward himself and said quietly, the Lord has gone north, and little time remains. The various sects may lay out their moves in advance. So long as those few are not harmed, nothing counts as a major matter. Li Ziming nodded slightly, hesitated, and asked, I intend to refine a portion of a supreme shaman spirit embryo. Might Senior offer some guidance? He did not underestimate the network of the supreme Yang Dao lineage. Huiki showed little surprise and waved his hand calmly. If Zheajing is earnest, come to Hui once the Lord has departed. He departed as a gust of gray wind. After he had left, Ningguan's expression turned solemn as she asked Li Ziming, did Zheajing notice the 4-eyed merciful one beside Nuzi? Li Ziming was slightly surprised and replied, I took a brief look. Ningguan said seriously, this man is called Bashan. My family has long known of him. My elders once mentioned that when Nuzi was still a merciful one, Bashan was one of his subordinate arhats. Because of his inborn divine power and exceptional innate ability, he was promoted step by step. Now that Nuzi has achieved Maha, he too has become a merciful one. Her expression darkened as she said, this man must not be underestimated. His divine power may well be comparable to Xuanfeng's. In terms of future prospects alone, Nuzi may not even match him. Back then, Nuzi had intended to make a move on Xuanfeng to complete a pair, but later, because the Great Ning Palace suddenly aligned with Anhui and metallic essence manifested, he abandoned the plan. Li Ziming frowned and nodded, while Ningguan said worriedly, if the Golden Feather sect does not act, Jiangbei is beyond our reach. The struggle between North and South has already destroyed most of the lines we once pushed northward. Now that the Golden Tang Gate, this crucial point, is lost, the Buddhist cultivators can bypass the eastern flank. However one looks at it, this is no good. Li Ziming sighed inwardly as Ningguan continued, I know Sidhu Ku is still in your hands. There are not many direct lineage members left in the Sidhu family, yet they have many enemies. As for Sidhu Hu outside, some regard him as a thorn in the eye or a splinter in the flesh. She said frankly, that naturally includes me, so I hope you will keep them. Once the matters in the north have run their course and an opportunity arises, we can calculate through the bloodline. If he can be eliminated, that would be best. Li Ziming nodded and parted from her. Behind him, the Sidhu family members, upheld by heavenly light, could only cling to one another and sob in silence, watching as he rode light down to the lake. More than a year had passed. The buildings within the grand formation were already completed, most constructed around the profound pillar. Various cultivation pavilions wound upward, clinging between the columns. He glanced around and descended onto a platform. The Wanglin blossom tree, graceful as a canopy, red flowers blooming in clusters, stood in the center. It was heavily guarded, and a white ape rested beneath it. Upon seeing Li Ziming, the ape rose and bowed. Li Ziming set the people down, exchanged greetings, and swept out his spiritual sense to search for someone. Soon, Li Jianqian and Li Quan arrived one after the other in the courtyard and saluted him. Li Ziming's expression was grave as he ordered, bring Sidhu Ku up. Li Jianqian immediately sent someone below. After a short while, Ding Weizeng, clad in red armor, brought up an old man. The man's gaze burned intensely, and upon reaching the hall he knelt in salute. Ding Weizeng had once been a cultivator under the Golden Tang Gate and had known this old man. It seemed he had come to see him off for the last time. Li Ziming nodded to him, allowing him to stay, and then looked at the old man on the ground. Sidhu Ku had actually lived decently within the Li family during his confinement. Though his cultivation was sealed, he had been fed and cared for in the dungeon. The moment he raised his eyes and saw Li Ziming, he shuddered in fright and greeted, greetings, Taoist master. Li Ziming said casually, the Golden Tang Gate has been exterminated by Buddhist cultivators. The Sidhu family has been wiped out, leaving only a few branches. I brought back a group. Sidhu Ku froze for a moment, then tears flowed as he kowtowed. I will obey whatever the Taoist master commands. The Li family had kept him for so long precisely because he was soft-boned. Li Ziming was not surprised. With a light sweep of his sleeve, several rows of jade slips appeared neatly stacked to one side. He pointed at them, unlocked them all. Sidu Ku hesitated as if to speak, but Li Ziming had already tossed Ningwan's jade slip before him. The old man hurriedly picked it up. Li Ziming turned to Ding Weizeng with a faint smile. Your cultivation has advanced quickly. It is all thanks to the Taoist master's blessing. Ding Weizeng lowered his head respectfully and replied, I was blessed with a child, a girl, a few years ago. I named her Ding Yujing. Good, Li Ziming turned and asked, is there one called Ding Mu still cultivating at Purple Smoke Gate? Li Jianqian quickly replied, yes, Taoist master. The family has supplied him with spiritual resources all these years. A few years ago, he returned with his mother to visit relatives and was very cordial, offering thanks again and again. Li Ziming nodded in satisfaction. On the other side, Li Qiuan stepped forward, holding a pale golden jade slip, and bowed. Taoist master, the heavenly lustrous gold sutra is here. Among all the inheritances of Golden Tang Gate, none was more precious than this. Sidu Tang's line had produced 3 Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. Though innate ability had played a role, the heavenly lustrous gold sutra was equally significant. Li Ziming scanned it. The technique was indeed impressive. As the foundation of the Golden Tang Gate, it reached the 5th rank and contained 2 secret techniques. Cultivating it led to the engraved stone, known in antiquity as the gold-feathered beast. The text claimed descent from the Heaven Whisker Dao lineage, whose patriarch was Taoist Master Tiangsu, a cultivator of Su state. As for its deeper origins, the text said little. Only at the end did it warn cultivators to wield sharpness with caution. Yet someone had left an annotation, engraved stone persists without relent, sharp and without regret like the gold-feathered beast. It may ascend but cannot descend. To descend is to fall, often imprisoned and slain by earthly baleful qi. If cultivation breeds stagnant knots of qi, how is that different from imprisonment by baleful qi? Only someone with an abundance of confidence could annotate a Purple Mansion Realm technique. It was likely Sidu Tang himself. Li Ziming shook his head inwardly. He sought only to cultivate divine abilities and act as he pleased without restraint. In truth, he did not care what became of Golden Tang Gate afterward. Though precious, the Xi family, Ning family, and the Golden Feather sect surely already possessed it. It would suit the juniors. Li Ziming put it away and examined the remaining techniques. Most did not impress him and were simply added to the family collection. Only one, the grand profound magnetic light wondrous art, was more unusual. Though merely a third-rate spell formula, it belonged to the Origin Thunder Dao and established the immortal foundation known as Primary Baleful Right. Li Ziming studied it for a moment longer before giving orders. The Golden Tang Gate has been exterminated. Qiuan, calculate whether any here are direct descendants of a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. Li Qiuan nodded, took Sidu Ku's blood, and formed seals with a jade token. Li Ziming turned to Li Jianqian and asked, how do you intend to deal with them? Better they had all died at the hands of the Buddhist cultivators. Li Jianqian did not truly wish to concern himself with the Sidu family, yet their bloodline was undeniably good. He replied, if left to me, they would be absorbed into the 7 families of Western Pool, their lineage and surname changed. Thus their former ties would be severed, and they would no longer bear the name Sidu. Li Ziming glanced at the trembling Sidu Ku kneeling at his feet and at the sorrowful Ding Weizeng. With a light flick of his finger, a trace of divine ability entered through the old man's brow and rose within him. As for you, Sidu Ku, if I release you, the monks will sooner or later seize you as provisions. For Weizeng's sake, you will remain by his side, doing odd tasks and patrolling the shores. That will count as your contribution. Chapter 1390, Established Momentum I. Ding Weizeng heard this, his eyes reddened, and he immediately knelt. His voice was choked with emotion as he said, Weizeng thanks the Taoist master. When the Ding family cultivated under the rule of the Golden Tang Gate, Sidu Chen was tyrannical and overbearing, harming us again and again. It was only because Senior Sidu Ku made arrangements on all sides that we were able to survive. When my parents were still alive, they repeatedly instructed me to remember this debt of gratitude. It is only that he failed to recognize the situation and opposed those on the lake, and in the end was captured by you, my lord. I could only secretly provide him aid. You have fulfilled the Ding family's obligation of gratitude. I do not know how to repay you. Old Sidu Ku kowtowed along with him, his back drenched in cold sweat. In truth, the arrangements he had made had all been the result of heavy bribe. Best from the Ding family. Among the many families at the time, although the Ding family did not give the most, they acted the most honestly, which was why he had favored them. Naturally, none of this could be spoken aloud. Sidu Ku murmured his thanks obediently, but the main reason Li Ziming spared him was because of Ningwan. Li Ziming said, no need to say more. This life spared is his own fortune. The Sidu family has many enemies. Keep a close watch on him. Ding Weizeng nodded respectfully, rose, and led the old man away. Sidu had clearly not expected that he would still have a chance to live after so many years in the Li family. Overcome with joy, he wept as he followed. Li Ziming turned to look at Li Qiuan, who was putting away the talismans. She reported, "Taoist master, there are no direct descendants of a Purple Mansion realm cultivator here, only one or two female relatives somewhat close in bloodline. The male members were likely taken away or killed. Make the arrangements." Li Ziming casually instructed Li Jiangqian. The Li family head nodded and reminded him, however, from what this junior can see, the techniques here are likely incomplete. In its prime, the Golden Tang Gate was famous for far more than just the heavenly lustrous gold sutra. Li Ziming nodded and quietly looked at the pile of jade slips. Though there were many techniques, their quality varied greatly. At the very least, the Flame Shadow Crow Chi from those years is absent. Even if it was not world-renowned, it was at least infamous. After all, Sidu Tang did not obtain just the Heaven Whisker Dao lineage. He had also gone to Mount Daoxuan in those days. Either those monks did not hand everything over, or the last Golden Tang Gate master, Sidu Mo, tampered with them and moved them elsewhere. Li Jiangqian bowed and said, "Since it is the Daoxuan Dao lineage, it would be reasonable for the Golden Feather sect to take it in advance. They likely feared it would be unjustified to take everything, so they left behind the Heaven Whisker Dao lineage." Li Ziming had seen the Daoxuan Dao lineage in Cheng Xiao's hands. It surpassed both his own family and the Buddhist cultivator's lineage by a wide margin. Although the power of a spell art ultimately depended on the person and their cultivation, a truly superior spell art could not be underestimated. As for the Dharma artifacts, Golden Tang Gate possessed quite a number of Dharma artifacts and pills. However, the pills of a declining sect like this could not compare to those of the Li family, which had a Purple Mansion realm alchemist. Fortunately, there were many Dharma artifacts, and most were imbued with mana. Naturally, he could not have the two of them refine each one individually. Li Ziming flicked his finger, and a sweep of bright yang radiance passed over them, refining all the Dharma artifacts on the ground in an instant. Nothing remarkable. It was unclear whether the truly powerful Dharma artifacts of the Golden Tang Gate had already been plundered or sold off by Sidu Tang and his descendants. Li Ziming's standards were now high enough that he frowned repeatedly at what he saw. Fortunately, there were many feathered robes. The two best were Metal Virtue feathered robes at the Foundation Establishment realm. However, Li Jiangqian and Li Minggong had no use for them. One was given to Li Qiuan, and the other was stored within the family, to be bestowed later, according to merit. Li Jiangqian flipped through the items with some interest and only found a single fire token. Upon closer inspection, it was of Merging Fire. Although this Dao lineage was looked down upon, it was still quite useful in combat. He then said, the Golden Tang Gate specialized in Metal Virtue and did not dabble in other side paths at all. As for these additional Dao lines, they were likely seized from others. That Flame Shadow Crow also carries a trace of Merging Fire. It must have been taken from some Daoxuan Dao lineage. The Golden Feather sect is a true monarch Dao lineage of Metal Virtue, and they also cultivate Radiant Essence, Fire Virtue, and even ancient Merging Daos, who only walks a single path. At the mention of the Golden Feather sect, Li Ziming's expression grew somewhat complicated as he murmured, "As for this matter now." Although the Buddhist cultivators had now claimed to occupy the north, there were only a few Dharma masters among them, and they had always shown deference to Mount Luoxia. As for the Golden Feather sect's actions, even if they had not been directly instructed by Mount Luoxia, they must at least have reported the matter. Mount Luoxia had clearly acquiesced. It could be seen from this true monarch matter that the Golden Feather Dao lineage was in fact subordinate to Luoxia. A true monarch had only given them a degree of autonomy. Now that this issue with the monks had surfaced, it was evident that Luoxia and the Golden Feather sect were not entirely harmonious above and respectful below. It was already an awkward affair. In everyone's hearts, it was considered an internal entanglement within Luoxia's faction. The Supreme Yang Dao lineage had even less reason to intervene. Even in their usual clashes with the Buddhist cultivators, neither side dared mention Luoxia. Although the Supreme Yang Dao lineage was noble, it was no longer the era of the 6 sons of Green Pine. He believed that the Wei's Li title of his family could not be cast off, and suddenly felt considerable pressure. As he sat silently, a sheet of radiant light rose into the sky, and he lifted his brows to look. Li Qiuan sensed it first. After a brief moment, she smiled and said, "Jiangxia has come out of seclusion." Li Ziming glanced at the radiant light in the sky, nodding as he said, "Have Zhonglong informed. Let them both come and meet me. I recall you still have 2 younger brothers. One cultivates radiant fire, the other jade true. How are they faring today?" Li Jiangqian ordered someone to summon them and reported, "Fourth brother Zhongliang has grown into a refined young gentleman, but by nature he cannot stay idle. In recent years, he has nearly finished learning the spell arts taught by Lord Kui. When I urged him to continue studying practical skills, he refused. Day after day, he is nowhere to be seen. If he is not allowed to go north, he heads south instead. Sometimes he escorts spirit items from the lakeside markets to the various markets of the Azure Pond sect. Sometimes he cannot be found for 3 or 5 days at a time. He let out a heavy sigh, looking deeply remorseful as he continued. Fifth brother Jiangyan is the complete opposite. He stays in his cave dwelling year after year and has not come out even once. Whenever asked, he is always in seclusion and cannot be disturbed. It is my failing as an elder brother that I could not guide them to steady their hearts. Li Ziming shook his head and replied, cultivation and experience are both good things. In the past, the conditions were lacking. Now that the Azure Pond sect is relatively safe, moving about is no harm. Li Qian said with some regret, it is only that Jianglong and Jiangxia have never quite gotten along since childhood. Fortunately, neither delays important matters, but as for any show of closeness between them, that will not be seen. Li Ziming did not care much. Having already reached the Purple Mansion realm, his perspective differed greatly from that of Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. He said softly, it does not matter if they do not get along. When a family grows large, harmony in all things is impossible. Chapter 1391, Established Momentum, II. Li Jiangqian cupped his hands as a brilliant, bright yang radiance shone in the sky, and an armored man descended. He was tall, holding short spears in both hands. With long brows and golden eyes, his bearing was open and bold. He landed briskly in the courtyard, swept his gaze across the scene, and knelt as he said, Jiangxia greets the Taoist master. He was not quite as imposing as Ding Weizeng, but comparable to Li Wen. Li Ziming's eyes brightened slightly, and he nodded. Just then someone was announced from outside the courtyard. A man wearing a feathered robe entered, a jade crown upon his head and a sword at his waist. His appearance was not as striking as Li Jiangxia's. He saluted Li Jiangqian and Li Qian before kneeling. Seeing the two emerge from seclusion one after the other, Li Ziming smiled and said, now we finally have people who can be put to use. He then turned to Li Jiangqian. You have lingered long enough at the early Foundation Establishment realm. With your 2 brothers now out of seclusion and myself present to oversee matters, set aside what you're handling and focus on breaking through first. Leave the affairs of the family to Jianglong and Jiangxia for the time being. Li Jiangqian seemed to have anticipated this and replied, I respectfully obey your command, Taoist master. He turned back and said with a smile, then I shall entrust matters to my 2 younger brothers. Li Jiangxia stepped forward, his voice firm and resonant as he gave a clear response. Li Jianglong was far more reserved and merely bowed. Li Ziming added, Jiangxia has long been stationed on the eastern shore and is more familiar with it. Let him oversee things there for now. As for affairs on the island, leave them to Jianglong. Neither showed any change in expression as they gave their thanks. Li Ziming tested their cultivation techniques and found their foundations solid. Li Jiangqian then said softly, since both my brothers are present, I have news to report. Li Jiangqian took a letter from his sleeve, his expression slightly grave as he said, Taoist master, please have a look. Li Ziming took it and saw that it was a handwritten letter from Wang Quan. Wang Quan. Li Ziming vaguely remembered what Wang Quan had looked like in those years. Now he was already a well-known cultivator in Jiangbei. Unfolding the letter, he found the tone still respectful and deferential. The letter inquired after the well-being of the lake and also mentioned a woman. Wang Xiaoxiao of the Jiangbei Wang family. Li Jiangqian waited until he finished reading before speaking carefully. This Wang Xiaoxiao is indeed a very close blood descendant of Wang Quan. From what I understand, she not only belongs to the Lord's side, she even brought him to meet Wang Quan in person. Oh. Lord gave Wang Quan several Dharma artifacts as a gesture of betrothal for Wang Xiaoxiao, and he accepted them all. Not only that, this happened quite some time ago. Although the exact date is unclear, the letter states, for many years we have maintained contact, yet out of reverence dared not speak much, nor dared to send letters to the lake. It certainly was not a matter of mere days. Li Ziming kept his expression neutral, neither pleased nor displeased, and gave an indistinct response. He handed the letter to the 2 beside him. Both young men read it. Li Jianglong frowned, while Li Jiangxia's expression changed. Li Jiangqian continued, that is one matter. When the true monarch departed, someone proposed it, and he temporarily delineated territory for the Wang family along the northern side. Wang Qi's faction was nearly eradicated by the true monarch. As for the most important point mentioned in the letter, it says someone from the Wang family accompanied the true monarch across the river to the north. Whether that is true or not remains uncertain. Li Jiangqian's information was certainly not as swift as Ning Wan's, yet was still remarkable. Li Ziming himself had only just learned of the true monarch's departure from Ningguan. By the time he reached the shore, Li Jiangqian already knew as well. Most likely, Wang Quan had sent the letter the moment Lin Feng left. He casually put the letter away and asked, "Who delivered it? Were any words left?" Li Jiangqian replied respectfully, "It was Wang Qiu. He has already reached the Foundation establishment realm. He withdrew after delivering it to the shore." Li Ziming sat down in the courtyard, choosing his words carefully. "The Lord has already departed. Send a reply stating that our family is interested in Dharma swords. Wang Xiaoxiao may have seen them. Tell him to draw all the sword diagrams and send them over." Li Jiangqian nodded repeatedly, yet still offered a reminder in a respectful tone. "Yes, but regarding Wang Quan, I fear we must make preparations early." Li Ziming naturally understood that Li Jiangqian had likely been on guard for quite some time. He asked calmly, "What do you all think?" Li Jiangxia's expression darkened. He was the most straightforward among the brothers, but also the most domineering, unable to tolerate the slightest dissent. He replied coldly, "This junior has never met Wang Quan, but I have heard Lord Ding speak highly of him. From what I see, he has no intention of remaining at the lake. He is the sort who bows only on the surface. He must be guarded against." Li Zhonglong's expression was heavy. Without hesitation, he agreed quietly, "Third brother speaks rightly. Wang Quan has never held true loyalty to our family. He is merely cautious and restrained since he has been forced to bow his head. He is not someone who will remain beneath another for long. Our family has never underestimated him in this regard, yet he also values face. The Taoist master has truly shown him favor. Although the Zhangbei Wang family lies beyond our immediate reach, he will still bow his head. Sooner or later, he will return to the lake. But who knows what benefits he has obtained? The advantages the Lord has given him may not bode well for our family in the future, even if he returns to the lake. In this junior's view, a man like him will never truly accept subordination. Even if he returns to the lake, our ability to suppress or placate him rests solely on the fact that he is only at Foundation Establishment realm. Should he truly break through to the Purple Mansion realm, he would become a calamity. Why go to such lengths? It would be nothing more than our family acting as his shield, feeding flesh to an eagle, allowing him to shelter beneath our eaves only to spread his wings one day. Li Jiangqian glanced at his two younger brothers. His expression remained respectful and his tone steady as he said calmly, "Indeed. The Zhangbei Wang family has been fragmented for years and is already a mess, yet he still cares for his kin. It would be better to leave him in Zhangbei within the Wang family there. Let him struggle on all sides, endure constant encroachment, and run back and forth currying favor between capital Immortal Dao and Chengyun. Use the harsh geography to grind down his fortune and exhaust his spirit. Let his clan remain chaotic and divided. Keep him restless day and night until he is unable to cultivate in peace. Our family's favor still hangs over his head. How could it be erased? Even if a phoenix were born from the flames one day and a Purple Mansion realm cultivator arose from that land, he would still have to respectfully address the Taoist master as senior. Compared to cultivating to the Purple Mansion realm within our family and then being forced to separate, tearing apart the bonds of blood and obligation that once bound him, is this not far better? Moreover, there is Wang Xiaoxiao. She is no ordinary figure. How could she be taken lightly?" He smiled and continued, "If Wang Quan is within our family, the entire Zhangbei Wang family stands behind him, and the whole family takes him as their pillar with pride. But if he establishes himself in Zhangbei and unifies the fragmented Wang family, that is another matter. There will be no stopping the resentment directed at him." Li Ziming said nothing. He quietly gazed at the Wanglin blossom tree to the east, his distant eyes wandering along the horizon. Li Qian stood behind Li Ziming, listening to the discussion with a chill rising in her heart. Her almond eyes followed his gaze for a brief moment before she quickly lowered her head. The Taoist master before her finally said, "This matter is already settled. I have other arrangements on the day the Lord returns to the mountain. I must first retrieve the Dharma swords and cannot go to receive Wang Xiaoxiao beforehand. That woman has surely fallen into another's hands. There is no need to dwell on it." Chapter 1392, Forged Successfully, I. Li Ziming settled the matter. The three before him all nodded in agreement. They took the pills and gave them to Li Jiangqian, who then instructed Li Jianglong and Li Jiangxia to select their Dharma artifacts. The Golden Tang Gate possessed Dharma artifacts of both Dewy Metal and Zheng Metal. These metal virtue artifacts at least did not conflict with Bright Yang. Li Jianglong chose a golden ring and accepted it with thanks. Li Jiangxia was far less reserved. He lifted them one by one to weigh in his hands, finally selecting two golden spears similar in shape and nearly identical in weight. "You may all withdraw, Qian remain." Li Ziming flicked his sleeve. The three brothers departed in different directions. Li Qian stepped from behind him to stand before him, upright and restrained. Sit, Li Ziming said softly. There was one thing Jiangqian could not mention earlier. Wang Quan enjoys the protection of our house. If he advances to the Purple Mansion realm, many of the family's secrets will no longer be concealed. As for sending him to Jiangbei, that will be his own opportunity. As for those brothers, I will have to trouble you to mediate among them more often. Li Qiuan hurriedly replied, the young masters all understand the greater picture. Their insight and vision surpass mine. It should be I who seeks their guidance. Li Ziming grew serious and asked, what do you think of Jiangliang and Jiangnian? Li Qiuan hesitated briefly before answering. Jiangliang learned under Senior Juyin and is indeed intelligent, yet he has long harbored the desire to venture outward. From what I see, he has already made friends beyond the lake. His heart truly does not lie here. As for Jiangnian, I have met him several times. His temperament is kind and gentle, unlike his brothers. Enough, Li Ziming shook his head and said, the Li family has no shortage of daughters, yet none has emerged like my aunt. Minggong may be obedient, but she lacks resolve and decisiveness. When Cheng Hui fell in a single day back then, I knew trouble would follow. As for the Zhuing generation, the old elder once discussed them with me. Zhuming is inadequate. Zhuliuo has ties to the Yang family and holds little attachment to the lake. Our family has never forced anyone. Zhao De remains in seclusion and may not succeed. Though Xinghan possesses slightly greater innate ability, her parents are minor figures within the family and do not know how to guide her. They may instead burden her, and her temperament is hardly better. Li Ziming sighed with emotion as he said, it is often said that the conflict between North and South broke the backbone of the great families. That is no falsehood. Our house is already considered fortunate, yet we still bear the bitter fruit of those years. Are the two from Purple Smoke Gate not the same? He let out another sigh. As for Jiangqian's brothers, they all have ambitions, perhaps too many ambitions. Zhao Wei and I can keep them in check, but what of beyond the family? Whether in the north or the south, there are many eyes fixed upon them. Li Ziming was in truth contemplating the matter of shaking the fruition attainment of Wei's grand ancestor Li Qianyuan, his express. Ian dimmed slightly as he instructed, take the copy of the grand profound magnetic light wondrous art and study it carefully. Prepare yourself by knowing both yourself and the other. We will not stir up these matters further. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers will soon be refined. The Lord still has more than a year. He spoke no further. Stepping into the great void, he traversed space and arrived at Zhaijing Mountain. Only 1 year. Li Ziming calculated on his fingers. 1 year was truly not enough for much cultivation. At most, he could refine the embryonic breathing realm through 6 cycles and nourish the second divine ability with a single strand of qi. But Bai Yinzi's position is troublesome. He is across the river, and the Buddhist cultivators may interfere. If fighting breaks out and I suffer serious injuries, this year of cultivation will have been for nothing. Having just considered this, Li Ziming quickly realized another matter. In that case, I would even waste a strand of profound past crimson fire qi and end up making a trip to the Qi family's Changzhou Island. After weighing it all, Li Ziming changed his decision. This year I shall focus on cultivating techniques. It may seem like sharpening the spear at the last moment, but it cannot be wrong. Jiangqian is in seclusion to break through, and there are fewer people at home to keep watch. He sat quietly. Techniques had always been Li Ziming's weakness. He was completely confident in alchemy, yet in combat he even lacked Li Zhaowei's halberd skills. In his early years, his days were divided between cultivation and pill refining. It was no wonder his techniques were lacking. Now that he had become a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, he would have to make up for it. I do not possess such profound attainment as to turn decay into wonder. Techniques suitable for Purple Mansion realm must be at least 4th grade. In Jiangnan, even the finest techniques do not exceed 6th grade. At present, I have some foundation in the 4th grade Heavenly Radiance, Hidden Light, and the 5th grade Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art. Heavenly Radiance, Hidden Light was an orthodox bright Yang technique. It resonated with the heavenly light at his brow. It was not weak and could deal with opponents in daily combat, yet it was difficult to inflict lethal damage, and further improvement was hard. The Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art was of slightly higher grade and the technique Li Ziming had grasped fastest. He had trained it by the sea for several years and could now barely present it with confidence. When Jiangqian received the bestowed techniques back then, there was far more than that. There was the 5th grade footwork technique Flame-Stepping Movement, the 5th grade escape spell Crimson Radiance of Li Sky, the 6th grade spell Great Li White Radiance, and the 5th grade spell Li Origin Barrier. To speak plainly, this inheritance could establish a Dao lineage on the level of Crimson Reef Island, yet they were all radiant fire techniques and extremely difficult. They suited their original method, but they were inevitably troublesome for bright Yang cultivation. Li Ziming had read them before. Setting aside Great Li White Radiance, which required Purple Mansion Realm Radiant Fire, only Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art felt natural. Now that his divine ability was complete, he reread them carefully. After a long moment of hesitation, he selected flame-stepping movement. Compared to the others, flame-stepping movement required the least use of radiant light and did not demand profound attainment. Like Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art, it required greater control of flame instead. This was undoubtedly easier to grasp for Li Ziming. With brilliant Yang King's axe in hand, my movements will inevitably be somewhat heavy. Heaven-venerating gait can reinforce the Dharma body, but refining footwork is still preferable. Li Ziming had also obtained a new palm technique recently. It lacked deep Taoist theory but employed talisman qi and was quite powerful. Meanwhile, flame-stepping movement was a fifth-grade footwork technique. If he gained some mastery, it would not be enough against Cheng Xiao, but it would suffice in close combat against someone with little attainment like the Merciful One. He then took out the two methods and studied them. Radiant fire resides in the heavens, ranked among the opposing stars, brilliant and resplendent. Thus calamity gathers in its orthodox position. Escape techniques are difficult. It is best to take only the footwork of stepping through flame. The Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art and flame-stepping movement shared the same origin. Studied together, they complemented each other and filled each other's gaps. With talisman qi guiding flame and qi, the results were barely satisfactory. Chapter 1393, Forged Successfully, II. Light and shadow intertwined as Tim. He flowed like water. Flames surged forth, crows cried, and rustling sounds rose on all sides as purple flames ascended. Dingling. Wind chime hanging on a jade pillar nearby moved without wind and rang softly. Only then did Li Ziming awaken as if from a dream. He felt as though he had only contemplated quietly for a short while and practiced the two spell arts with a controlled flame, yet someone had already come to report. Only then did he notice that gardenia blossoms had piled nearly 3 feet thick upon the ground. A few sparks flickered atop the flowers and slowly died out as he regained awareness. More than half a year had passed. No wonder most Purple Mansion realm cultivators are distant and detached. These 6 months felt like less than a single month. If one truly enters seclusion, how could one still remember anyone? Come up. Li Ziming was still reluctant to let go of that earlier sensation. He silently deepened his grasp of it as an old man climbed the steps. A red robe was casually draped over his upper body, and his build was burly. It was naturally Chu Minglian. When he reached the steps and saw gardenias carpeting the ground and the jade pillars gleaming white, he did not dare step through and hesitated to advance. Li Ziming felt a surge of joy and appeared before him in an instant. Chu Minglian immediately said, "Congratulations, Taoist master, the spirit embryo is complete." Haha, Li Ziming's face brightened with joy. He lifted his brows and lifted the old man up with a sweep of heavenly light. He stepped through the great void and manifested on the viewing pavilion. Below, people dropped to their knees in a rush. Chu Minglian bent at the waist as well and offered congratulations. "Congratulations, Taoist master." A thunderous chorus rose from below. Refining the spirit embryo had required many Foundation Establishment realm cultivators working in rotating shifts, and the news had not been deliberately sealed. Many in the surroundings already knew, and congratulations rang out from all sides. Li Ziming raised his hand lightly, and a dense blue-yellow radiance rose within. The blue drifted and coiled, while the yellow was solemn and weighty. They illuminated each other, like finely ground sand of two colors spilled together and mixed into one. Clang! On both sides of the viewing pavilion, blue-yellow patterns of mountains and rivers appeared. A roar like mountains and seas surged over the cultivators again and again, knocking them off balance. Then heavenly light followed like a prison. Smiling, Li Ziming flicked his sleeve. All phenomena instantly contracted back into the Dharma artifact's true body and vanished, revealing the true form of ruler of manifested mountains and rivers. The ruler's main body was bright yellow, with silver sand that appeared and disappeared. Large stretches of its patterns were azure jade in color, depicting the designs of mountains and rivers. It was approximately 47 centimeters long, 2.3 centimeters thick, and 4.7 centimeters wide. The treasure still carried an elegant bearing, with less heaviness and more of a slender beauty. It floated quietly amid the blue and yellow hues. A small, palm-sized range of undulating mountains and rivers with rolling waves, like a fine azure jade stand presenting the treasure in midair, was reflected beneath it. Li Ziming accepted it lightly and felt a considerable weight. After refining, ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was 3 millimeters thinner than before and around 7 centimeters longer, roughly the width of 6 fingers. In the hand, it's rather like a thick-backed short blade. Now that he had it in his hands, he could not help but feel reluctant to part with it. He loosened his fingers, and the spirit ruler obediently flipped over and fastened itself at his waist. Li Ziming swept his gaze over the crowd. No one could look away. Smiling, he instructed them, "Disperse." Heavenly light surged up, swept Chu Minglian along, and descended toward Zhaijing Mountain. The old man's gaze could not move from the spirit ruler either. As an artifact smith in front of a spirit embryo he had personally helped refine, how could he not be moved? Faint tears of excitement even glimmered in his eyes. Li Ziming sat down beside the table. The gardenias on its surface obediently scattered and flew away. He cradled the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers in his hands, and bright Yang divine ability spread through it. Yang apex carved at the tail, heavenly radiance carved at the head, paint mountains and rivers, write no gods. Huiki had once mentioned that the material of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was Crane River Azure Jade, which had long been extinct. Though Jade True had returned and Jade was flourishing again, there was still no word of anyone obtaining it. Jade was beautiful in itself, and with bright Yang spirit. Yule essence added, it became even harder to look away. As bright Yang divine ability suffused it, he gradually became familiar with controlling the object. The primary function of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was the manifestation of mountains and rivers itself. Once activated, it summoned the patterns of mountains and rivers and covered an area of 163 meters in every direction, roughly the span of one palace and one hall. It could push and entangle enemies within the mountains and rivers. The closer they were, the more effective it became. The second was Sovereign Weighing. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers contained a trace of might. If an enemy's spell entered the mountains and rivers, the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers could halt its measuring and distinguish the spell's power, sweeping away deception. These mountain and river patterns also had uses as a shortcut when followed, and as a long path when reversed, as well as aiding cultivation and discerning enemies. Their might was not great and overlapped somewhat with the mysteries of the heavenly light at his brow, but one could never have too many good mysteries. Compared to brilliant Yang King's axe, ruler of manifested mountains and rivers is naturally inferior by quite a bit. Huiki was right. It has more than enough subtlety, but insufficient might. This was not the imperial family's true weapon. It was more like something meant to display the imperial family's dignity, valuing subtle elegance above all. Although the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers fell within the broader scope of spirit artifacts, it was ultimately still a spirit embryo. One could not demand too much. The result as it stood already left Li Ziming very satisfied. At the very least, it has been infused with Purple Mansion Realm's spiritual essence. It will not be mediocre. He examined it carefully and began calculating on his fingers. A spirit embryo had to be nourished at all times with the mind and divine ability. If it left the Purple Mansion Realm and went too long without the nourishment of divine ability, it would gradually lose its subtlety and revert to a Dharma artifact. When Li Ziming first learned of this, he had suspected that many particularly subtle ancient Dharma artifacts were in fact spirit embryos of ancient cultivators that had degenerated. Calculating now, with the support of Purple Mansion Bright Yang's spiritual essence, if the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers were suddenly taken and deprived of Bright Yang divine ability, its power would slowly weaken. It would only take 5 years for it to completely fall into a Dharma artifact, though it would still be far more subtle than it had originally been. That would be a grievous loss. If Li Ziming were to retrieve it later and refine it again on the viewing pavilion, it would still not reach its present power, even after 10 or 20 years of refinement, unless he obtained another strand of Bright Yang's spiritual essence. Now the spirit embryo is complete. I leaned on the connections of others, took on debts, spent a Purple Mansion Realm spirit item treasured for years, ran back and forth, and even paid the price of standing idle without action when the true monarch came to the lake. At last my strength has risen to another level. That Li Ziming could achieve such a leap in strength in such a short time was partly his own fortune and partly the deliberate assistance of Huiki and the Supreme Yang Dao lineage. In truth, during the turmoil in Jiangbei when the Supreme Yang Dao lineage was secretly plotted against by Buddhist cultivators, he was the one who benefited most in the shadows. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers could not be stored within heavenly light like brilliant Yang King's axe. He only needed a subtle gesture for the blue jade and bright yellow, interwoven spirit embryo to hang itself at his waist. Li Ziming felt refreshed and raised his brows. These past years have been hard on Senior Chu. Setting aside the reward, you and Qiuhu have been of great help to Moongaze. Chu Minglian had been sent by Ning Wan. Li Ziming naturally could not forget the Autumn Lake Ferry. Chu Minglian was even more emotional than he was, tears streaming down his aged face. That I could achieve this in my lifetime is thanks to your fulfillment, Taoist Master. How would I dare speak of reward? Li Ziming laughed heartily and exchanged a few pleasantries. When he heard that Li Jianqian had already prepared the reward, he felt reassured and sent the man off. He then sat down again in contentment, yet he had not forgotten the matter in the north. There is less than a year left. I will continue in seclusion to cultivate spell arts. The fragment in the north must not be lost. No matter which house comes to seize it, no matter what grave injuries I suffer or what price I must pay, I will obtain that thing. Chapter 1394. Please I. Shanghuo County of Yaoxiang Prefecture in Zhao State. Bitter winter had arrived, and the vast world was covered in white. Yaoxiang Prefecture had once been under the governance of Qinling Temple, but the monastery collapsed over time and fell into neglect. Later, a master monk returned from the south after attaining Dao and assumed the title of the Merciful One, restoring Qinling Temple and raising it anew. This Merciful One, Liakang, behaved in unusual ways. He believed that without studying the scriptures, deliberate suffering did not truly accumulate blessings for the next life. The people of Shanghuo County no longer overworked themselves or maimed themselves to death. Instead, they read sutras and recited sacred names. Thus, they no longer needed to brave the wind and swallow snow to prove their piety in winter, and one ritual fell away. Of course, fewer people from Shanghuo County had ascended to the Pure Land in recent years. The common folk dared not resent the Buddhist cultivators. They could only blame their own lack of devotion. Now and then someone would crush a finger or break a leg and rejoice wildly, believing that they would surely accumulate merit through suffering and hardship. Within this tranquil land, streaks of multicolored light suddenly rose into the sky. More than a dozen master monks rode the wind as they arrived, mingled with numerous cultivators. The leader barked sharply. He fled to this place. Search at once and do not let him escape. The streaks of light scattered at once. The master monks and cultivators descended on the wind and began searching everywhere. Though their garments differed and they clearly belonged to different Dao lineages, they cast aside their prejudices and joined forces to surround the area. After some time, a surge of golden light erupted with a thunderous roar, accompanied by a shrill bellow. He is and died here. In an instant, the sky filled with multicolored light as everyone converged on the light. A shimmering grand formation emerged upon a seemingly empty snowfield. Within it stood a long bearded man dressed in Jiangbei attire, holding a formation plate. His face looked grim as he stood within the formation, somewhat at a loss. How could they arrive so quickly? Brother Lin has only just begun his seclusion. But when the master monks saw this scene, how could they let it pass? They immediately surrounded the grand formation. The leader's voice was colored with hatred. Good, good, you fiend. You have shattered mountains and destroyed temples all along your path, ruining our inheritances and monasteries. Retribution has come at last, and now we have cornered you here. We may not belong to great sects, but we will not tolerate such humiliation. Fellow Taoists, strike together. Golden light flashed and white vapors crisscrossed the air. All manner of Dharma artifacts struck the grand formation together, producing resounding booms. The man within the formation staggered and hurriedly poured mana into it. Yet how could he withstand the combined assault of more than a dozen foes by himself, with such meager mana? Han Li once said this formation is formidable, but its strength lies in concealment. It can be deployed at any time and is not restricted by terrain. It is by no means a formation suited for defense. Despair surged within him. He hailed from the Wang family of Jiangbei and was named Wang Changyan. His parents had ventured north in their early years and vanished without a trace. As he grew, his innate ability emerged, and he gradually became a prodigy of the local Wang family. It was only when Lin Feng swept across Jiangbei that the Wang family pledged allegiance to Lin Feng, and he followed suit. Upon hearing that Lin Feng intended to head north, he was overjoyed. He had long wished to search for his parents but lacked the strength to do so. Thus he seized the chance to follow Lin Feng north, serving him loyally. Yet it was as though they were haunted the entire way. They kept encountering all kinds of devil cultivators and other cultivators, all of whom were slain by Lin Feng. After fighting their way here and seeing the enemies grow ever more numerous, Lin Feng decided to break through to the Purple Mansion realm to travel more easily afterward. But they have come far too many and far too fast. In less than a quarter of an hour, the formation plate in his hand began to flicker. Fine cracks spread across it, and it grew scorching hot. Bang! The precious formation plate could bear no more and exploded into fragments that filled the sky. The shimmering grand formation faded with it, revealing his enemies before him. The leading monk, face flushed with fury, fixed his gaze upon the scene within the formation and shouted, "Only you, you wretch, where is that fiend?" Wang Changyan knew that Lin Feng was in seclusion within the cave, dwelling beneath his feet, and refused tea. "Oh, say more." Monk did not strike immediately. Instead, grief threaded its way through his face and voice as he said, Ever since the Maha fell and the various lineages scattered, our small branch has had no wish to contend with others. We remained in the mountains day after day only to pass on our Dao lineage. Who would have thought that you bastards would storm in, kill without cause, and destroy our temple? What justice is there in that?" The others beside him gnashed their teeth. A cultivator stepped forward and shouted sternly, "There is no need to waste words. Force him to reveal the fiend's whereabouts." He strode forward and seized Wang Changyan, whose mana was already exhausted in a few moves. Just as he was about to act, the heavy snow in the sky suddenly ceased. The snow beneath their feet melted at once, replaced by crimson flames. "Who dares?" Red flames erupted from the cave dwelling below and rolled forth among them. Unable to withstand the divine ability, the Buddhist cultivators and other cultivators all fell to their knees, their kneecaps shattering and their organs rupturing. A man clad in red and white armor rode the flames out, threw back his head, and let out a long howl. The snow in the sky was swept clean, leaving only his proud figure standing tall. "A swarm of ants dares to block my path." He brought two fingers together and expelled a gout of flame. In an instant, the cultivators below were burned clean away. Whether it was the monk crying injustice or the cultivator whose son had been slain along the way, none were left, not even ash. Even the fertile land beneath the snow was scorched dry, its moisture burned away as soil turned to sand and formed a desert. "Brother Lin!" Wang Changyan wept with joy, yet dark clouds gathered in the sky. A colossal golden body gradually emerged, half concealed within thick, brilliant light. Its feet stood upon the clouds, trampling heaps of fiends piled like mountains. Behind it stretched 1,000 arms, each gripping a long staff. A jade crown shone atop its head, within which was set a human head filled with fury. The lips on the pale jade face slightly parted. Upon its tongue was another face, pink and vivid, eyes bulging and shot with blood. It opened its mouth and shouted, "Fiend, you dare to slaughter wantonly here. I am Maha of the wrathful Tao, descending amid a rain of blossoms to subdue you, demon." Wang Changyan nearly fainted from fright. He thought, what kind of Maha is this? So hideous, a head growing from a head. Even a fiend would not look worse. Even Lin Feng frowned at the spectacle. After looking twice, he could not suppress the disgust rising in his heart. Anger throbbed within him, as though he had seen this thing long ago and instinctively loathed it. He replied, "To hell with your Maha." He immediately reached out and drew forth a long blade gleaming with red light. Holding it in hand and pointing it at the colossal figure in the sky, he rose into the air amid rolling crimson flames. "Fire come!" As expected of a great figure, he had produced a spirit treasure at once. The Maha in the sky was nearly frightened into revealing his true form and fleeing, yet having accepted this task, he could only brace himself, take out a treasure artifact, and shout, "Fiend, you still dare to be arrogant." This gaudy treasure artifact lasted only a single breath beneath the raging dry fire spirit treasure. Barely sustained by stronger mana, it let out a strained creak as Lin Feng's lips curved upward, then exploded with a thunderous blast. "Wretched fiend!" The Maha did not dare linger. He rode the wind and transformed into light to flee, streaking across the horizon. Seeing through his bluster, Lin Feng laughed and soared after him toward the north, leaving behind only flames in the sky and a parting sentence. "Changyan, wait here, I will return shortly." The flames drifted down and enveloped Wang Changyan, clearly shielding him. He sat cross-legged with a face full of relief, filled with emotion. Incredible to chase down such a terrifying Maha. After sitting for some time, his heart gradually steadied, and the wind and snow began to fall once more. Then, he noticed a black speck moving in the storm. After a while, he saw an old man slowly approaching with a cane. At first he worried for the old man, but upon closer look he saw burned scars of ordination on the man's scalp. Disgust rose in him. The cane stood planted firmly in the snow as the old monk pressed his palms together and sighed, "Fellow Taoist, you have come seeking your kin, have you not?" Wang Changyan assumed the old monk had divined it with a divine ability. He remained silent and wary, yet the old monk continued, "Your senior brother and sister came from the south in those years and attained sudden enlightenment, gaining great renown in the Dharma realm. Now you too have been called by destiny and have led 1,000 miles. Borrowing this great man's momentum could not be more fitting. Fellow Taoist, it is time to return to the Buddhist land." Wang Changyan continued to watch him cautiously as the old monk smiled faintly and said, "I am the abbot of the great Mahayana Dharma realm. Guided by destiny, I have come to receive you." At that moment, the wind and snow abruptly ceased, and brilliant light burst forth. The wind and snow over Shanghuo County flickered in and out, yet Lin Feng had already ridden the wind far away, passing one snow-covered prefectural city after another. At first, monks still looked up at him, but soon the terrain rose higher and higher. The monks vanished, replaced by drifting immortal aura and swirling white mist. After pursuing for a while, Lin Feng drew a small flask from his sleeve. He blew upon it, and a crimson flame leapt out, swelling in the wind. The surrounding snow vanished in its blaze, and the earth split apart. Having already lost a fine treasure artifact to him, the Maha dared not meet the attack with his Dharma body. He hurled out several ordinary treasure artifacts instead, yet this flame was no common fire. It swept through the air and instantly melted the gleaming artifacts into molten iron and gold. Then, as if oil had been poured upon the blaze, the renewed flame surged toward his back. The Maha was about to slip into the great void when a chill struck the center of his brows. That spirit treasure blade was already aligned with the great void, waiting for him to enter so it could descend from above and strike him unawares. Damn it! He could only circulate mana to bear the lesser harm. Streams of golden light surged from between his brows to block the raging flames behind him. The dry fire was unlike any other. When a single drop touched his mana, it swelled at once, draining the strength from his entire body as though he were engulfed in layers of karmic fire. His Dharma body cracked inch by inch and he could scarcely move. The layer of mana was pierced like thin paper. The Maha's Dharma body, famed for its sturdiness, met the flames and was burned through like melting wax, leaving a gaping hole. Brilliant light flickered as he howled in agony. They say Foundation Establishment Realm and Purple Mansion Realm cultivators are no longer as fearsome as before. What nonsense is that? Since when does a mere Purple Mansion Realm cultivator pull out 2 spirit treasures and chase someone down like this? No matter how grave his injuries, the Maha did not let his escape light falter, and at last gained a brief moment to breathe. Yet Lin Feng closed in, blazing flames nearly licking at the Maha's back. The spiritual energy grew denser as the chase continued. The Maha no longer dared to weave through the great void, but instead burned vast amounts of mana to travel in the manifested world, barely maintaining his distance. As the terrain grew more complex, the Maha shrank his form and slipped past the flames, transforming into a pale-skinned young monk in a sorry state. The robe on his back was burned through, charred black and red. He even retained habits from his mortal days, hissing through his teeth to ease the pain, while lifting his robe to reveal calves bound in white cloth as he hurried forward. By now they had reached deep into the mountains. Faintly, a woodcutter's song drifted through the forest. Lin Feng sensed something amiss and halted. Ahead, 2 Taoists were conversing with smiles upon a stone. The younger one stood by the stone, perhaps middle-aged, with a slightly long face and phoenix eyes. He was simply dressed, with only 6 quaint little swords hanging at his waist like ornaments. He bowed respectfully. The elder wore a purple-black Taoist robe. Though his face bore many wrinkles, he still carried the air of an immortal sage. He gazed forward with a gentle smile that inspired warmth. Lin Feng stopped. The monk dropped to his knees with a thud and kowtowed beneath the 2 Taoists, his head striking the ground loudly. The middle-aged Taoist stepped over him and came before Lin Feng with a smile. "My lord, please." Lin Feng frowned slightly and stepped forward. The elder Taoist leapt down from the stone and cupped his hands in salute. "Senior, please." Chapter 1395, Please Ai. Jiangbei. The mountain range was sparse with vegetation. A thin layer of drifting snow covered the slopes facing a stretch of low northern hills. The range itself lay only a few dozen kilometers from the Golden Tang Gate. A mere glance eastward revealed Mount Tangdao and the brilliant Buddhist land rising straight into the clouds. Many monks had already built temples nearby and divided the territory among themselves. There were no famed peaks here, and the great void showed little fluctuation. Li Ziming silently rode his heavenly light, dimming its radiance as he waited quietly in a corner of the great void. The appointed Tim. For the Lord in Jiangbei had been set for the 6th year and 6th month. Turmoil in the north was no small matter, though it was hard to discern clearly from such a distance. Yet the time was certain. Li Ziming had left seclusion early and lingered anxiously in the void for over a month now. What troubled him most was the Buddhist land to the east. The area where Master Beiyin cultivated had originally been quite favorable, neither too close nor too far from several major sects. The only nearby force was the Golden Tang Gate. He himself was already an old man, so when factions contended, he naturally fared worse than people like Xiao Yuan. But once the Buddhist cultivators seized the Golden Tang Gate and crossed the mountains southward, his position became extremely awkward, since he was almost pressed against their doorstep. As Li Ziming waited in silence, his heart was heavy with concern. Earlier it had been uncertain, but it's been more than a month since a merciful one has clearly arrived in grand fashion. Evidently, the Buddhist cultivators value this old man more than expected. Master Beiyin had little left to walk in the immortal Tao. He had practiced unsightly methods from the Qi cultivation realm to the Foundation Establishment realm and had nearly relied on luck to achieve Foundation Establishment realm. Yet the Buddhist cultivators did not value such matters. Age was of no concern, for once one entered the Buddhist land, lifespan was greatly extended. A few years more or less meant little. Fortunately, the Buddhist side seemed to have arranged matters and sent only one merciful one. A single one was nothing to fear. I will take the man and leave without entangling myself further. With two great treasures upon him, his confidence was stronger. After waiting quietly for a moment, he silently recited an incantation and invoked the immortal mirror. As his kihai stirred, his heart trembled. It is indeed Master Bayan. Master Bayan's cave dwelling was shallow and crude, like a small burrow atop the mountain. The old man sat upright in cultivation, with a golden-sheathed sword lying beside him. Li Ziming nearly jumped in alarm. Looking closer, he saw that the gold was merely the scabbard, seemingly fashioned from some cheap golden stone, hardly worthy of housing a Dharma sword. Yet a gray longsword rested quietly within that gaudy casing, radiating a cold moonlit sheen utterly mismatched with its owner's attire. Falling laurel. To speak bluntly, even if Master Bayan himself were sold along with everything in this cave, it would not equal the value of the sword's materials. Yet this precious secret Supreme Yin longsword had been tossed casually beside the bed, as though it were ordinary. Truly, Li Ziming saw clearly. This was the very blade that had once appeared in everyone's mind. Good. His gaze sharpened and settled on the end of the sword. It was not bare but hung with a Qi cultivation realm treasure, seemingly woven from golden silkworm threads, gleaming brightly. The discovery made Li Ziming pause slightly. He withdrew his gaze and swiftly formed a conjecture. It is undoubtedly the blade. Then there can be no mistake. The fragment should have hung at the end. If the Great One had removed it, he would have removed the fragment as well and given it to Master Bayan. Then it is highly likely Master Bayan put the fragment away himself, forged the scabbard, found the original ornament too rustic and unbecoming, and replaced it with golden silkworm thread tied at the sword's end. Rogue cultivators are frugal. If he stored the fragment away, it is probably in his storage pouch. He immediately turned his gaze to the great void. Near the mountain, two merciful ones and a purple mansion realm Taoist master in Taoist robes stood motionless as they waited. What a lively gathering! With the immortal mirror, Li Ziming knew their precise positions. Calculating carefully, if he descended from here, he would arrive simultaneously with the old nun. His speed was not slow. Snow continued to fall in tufts as he pondered. A red glow rippled across the horizon and flickered in the distance. The jade pendant in his palm suddenly shattered into fine powder. The Lord has gone to Luoxia. The breakthrough phenomenon appeared, and the jade pendant broke at the same moment. It was a message from Ningguan. Though he did not know where she was, perhaps even competing for resources herself, she had still remembered to warn him. Li Ziming's mind cleared. He immediately stepped through the great void. Brilliant heavenly light rose from the mountains, appearing almost simultaneously with the distant phenomenon. The formation Master Bayan set atop the mountain was mere child's play. Crossing the great void took but a thought. The heavily sealed stone doors of the cave dwelling were a joke, almost non-existent before the eyes of a purple mansion realm cultivator. Li Ziming appeared within the cave dwelling. Sure enough, the cave dwelling was dimly lit, shabby and poor. Only a bean-sized flame flickered, and there was a stone bed so simple it could not be simpler. The old man Master Bayan, hunched and stooped, sat cross-legged on the bed in cultivation, utterly unaware. Boom! Brilliant treasure light appeared almost as quickly as Li Ziming. On the other side of the cave, an aged nun with a compassionate face, clad in gray robes and holding a long string of prayer beads, appeared. Her eyes were icy as she stared straight ahead. Fellow Taoist, wait. Li Ziming reached for the man at the same time as she did, his heart in turmoil. If a merciful one clashed with a purple mansion realm cultivator, Master Bayan would surely not survive. Though the old nun was capable, she ultimately wanted the man. Her first instinct would be to use all her mana to shield Master Bayan, even at the cost of yielding the Dharma sword Falling Laurel. He gave a faint sigh. In the end, he flicked his finger lightly, using heavenly light to evade her divine ability. His hand closed on the hilt, and he retrieved Falling Laurel from the bed. His strength was clearly superior. If only the two of them were present, a spirit artifact would settle the matter, and both items would fall into his possession at once. Yet two more lurked behind like siskins, so Li Ziming could only take the sword first. There was no other reason. Many eyes were on Li Ziming. The Li family had publicly learned of the sword from a true monarch and had long searched for its image, finally tracing it to Master Bayan. From beginning to end, all factions believed the Li family's search was all for the sake of this Taiyin Dharma sword. For its sake, Li Ziming had even abandoned Wang Xiaoxiao's family. That could barely be explained through the connection between the law of celestial moon and supreme yin. But if he ignored the sword and reached instead for the man's storage pouch, not only the Purple Mansion realm cultivators, merciful ones, and Mahas watching from above, even a fool would know something was wrong. If trouble arose later, it would be endless, and others would fight to the bitter end. By taking the sword, there would still be room for negotiation afterward. He could only feign delight as he put the sword away, watching her divine ability shield Master Beiyin. Even so, surprise flickered in the nun's eyes as she stared coldly at him. She said, "Oh, the Li family has even abandoned Wang Xiaoxiao. This supreme yin dharma sword must hide something." Li Ziming did not fear her in the least as he gazed calmly back at her. The item before him was his by right, and killing intent swelled in his heart as he said softly, "You alone cannot take him away. All of you may as well come out." The remark made up for his earlier move. A trace of wariness appeared on the nun's face. She formed hand seals without speaking. The beads rolled and emitted abundant golden light. "Just you." Li Ziming stood unmoving. The blue-yellow spirit ruler at his waist rose into the air and slowly turned. Two colored mountain and river patterns spread like rippling water, tearing apart the cave's formation along with its stone doors and walls. The cellar-like dwelling exploded from within like a firecracker, raising a storm of dust and powdered stone over the mountaintop. Boom! Layer upon layer of mountain patterns bloomed like a mysterious blue-yellow flower atop the snow-dusted peak. The Taoist in white golden robes stood upon heavenly light, his voice thunderous and filled with killing intent. "Do you truly think you sit beneath the lotus throne?" Chapter 1396, Golden Axe, I. Patterns of mountains and rivers in azure and yellow materialized, swiftly sweeping away the billowing sand and stone dust. The old nun could no longer maintain her appearance and immediately radiated brilliant light, transforming into her true form. "The Buddhist land lies in the east. Fellow Taoist, you are truly bold." It was a female figure overflowing with brilliant light. 100 slender arms spread like a screen behind her, while a pair of normal-sized hands were clasped in prayer before her chest. Her eyes shone with golden light as she sat solemnly upon a pink lotus dais suspended in the air. The moment she appeared, heavenly light flickered between Li Ziming's brows, allowing him to discern between reality and illusion. His heart settled at once. This thing is only somewhat stronger than the newly advanced merciful one beneath Chilu back then. At least she has something to sit on, though it looks like an inferior treasure artifact. I did not fear such goods in the past, let alone today. Still, this one appears impressive. With so many hands behind her, she is clearly different from Chilu's group. She is likely one who has been specially cultivated. Otherwise, she would not have received such a favorable assignment. NT to come guide others. After his heavenly light finished its examination, the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers spun and flickered in the air before suddenly bursting with light. The power of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was closely tied to distance. The nearer it was to Li Ziming's true body, the stronger its entangling pull became. In her attempt to seize Master Beiyin, the old nun had come almost directly before him. Though she had retreated 2 steps, she was still within several meters. The old nun suddenly felt as if she had fallen into a muddy swamp. The azure and yellow hues formed mountains and rivers beneath her feet that entangled and pulled at her, weighing down her Dharma body. The Dharma light she had intended to use to withdraw was dragged apart and dispersed, leaving her barely able to move. Hatred rose instinctively within her. This cursed devil cultivator, capturing people day after day to refine artifacts, yet possessing such a fine treasure. From its appearance, it likely draws from the imperial observation origin mentioned in ancient texts. But how could Li Ziming waste such a perfect opportunity by giving her time to react? At this distance, whether it was true fire or a spell art, she had no chance to escape into the great void. His 2 fingers were already joined before his lips. Profound fire of the 3 phases guard. The true fire had a core of white gold, wrapped in blazing red. It suddenly blossomed in the air, transforming into pure golden flames that spread outward, accompanied by purple fire as they raged toward the old nun. The old nun immediately formed seals to defend and indeed sought to retreat, but guarding against the true fire delayed her for a brief instant. In that moment, a brilliant radiance came flying toward her. Heavenly radiance, hidden light. The old nun already knew of Li Ziming's divine ability and had heard that he had refined a spirit embryo. Otherwise, she would not have been so wary. Though she had not expected the range of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers to be so vast, she possessed her own inheritance. The slender arms behind her shone, casting a golden glow on her. This golden spell art seemed to have been prepared long in advance and stored within the arms behind her. Now it surged forth like a waterfall, temporarily blocking the flames in midair. The lotus seat beneath her feet also emitted a pink glow, resisting the incoming heavenly radiance, hidden light. However, no matter how dense the golden light was, Purple Mansion Realm True Fire was not so easily resisted. The light crackled as it burned, thinning rapidly, while the heavenly radiance, hidden light condensed to a single point, scorching the Lotus Throne's pink Dharma shield until it flickered between brightness and dimness. Damn that spirit embryo! She had not expected such a chain of profound techniques to arrive one after another. Worse still, she was still restrained by the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers. One step backward became step after step backward. Unsure whether the increased strength came from proximity, she suddenly felt the urge to retreat and spat out brilliant light. But in the span of a breath that she was held in place by true fire and hidden light, the Taoist in white golden robes arrived before her, extending a simple, unadorned palm. This is bad. How could she dare receive that strike? The most plain attacks were often the most dangerous. Thus, without waiting for the brilliant light in her mouth to fully form, she expelled it all at once to block, while trying to shift sideways to retreat. Boom! The radiant, brilliant light was swallowed by dense flames. Li Ziming felt a slight heat in his palm as his strike brushed past her Dharma body, shattering the pink protective barrier of the throne into nothingness. The old nun felt her face burn. Though she had avoided the strike, the blue-yellow mountain and river patterns of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers surged like ocean waves, activating again with even greater force. Even as she retreated, she only managed to move a few meters. Only then did she realize what was happening with the increasingly powerful spirit embryo, so its strength grows the closer it is. She had cultivated in the north all her life, where the merciful one were far more numerous. Encounters with Purple Mansion Realm Taoist masters were rare, and even when she did encounter one once or twice, it never required open conflict. Now, facing one for the first time, she finally understood why the merciful ones were always considered inferior. He has not even used that divine ability yet. I am already lacking one compared to him, and my treasure artifact is far inferior to his spirit embryo and spirit artifact. How could I match him alone? It is often said that only beneath the golden lotus throne, with the strongest blessing of the Buddhist land, can one make Purple Mansion Realm Taoist masters wary. Without a valuable treasure artifact, how could it be otherwise? Li Ziming felt no regret. His strike was never supposed to be easy to land. Preventing her from entering the Great Void was enough. Her defensive maneuvers had already caused the Lotus Throne to lose its effect. The white light at the center of Li Ziming's eyebrows still shone, and heavenly radiance, hidden light, continued to operate. Boom! Heavenly light finally struck her chest. Billowing bright white smoke burst forth along with sparks, causing her to spit out golden blood. Though heavenly radiance, hidden light was not overwhelmingly powerful, its alignment with righteousness amplified its force. If not for the merciful one's formidable Dharma body, it would have already been more than she could endure. The golden light in the sky had been completely burned away by now. The surging true fire rose like clouds and was about to pour down. If the old nun were to be struck by this flame, she would suffer unbearable agony. There was no way to protect Master Bayin in her hands. At last, in panic, she cried out, Nuyen. As her voice echoed out, laughter rang through the sky. Another golden body, vast as a palace, appeared within the great void. Each of their forearms were holding a gleaming golden implement. Brilliant light flickered between its brows as it continued the spell art that had been blocking the true fire. Its voice thundered like a storm, Nuxeo, you still cling to thoughts of keeping it for yourself. You are about to be beaten to death. Li Ziming cast a glance. The Purple Mansion Realm figure within the Great Void had not moved yet. Faint golden light slowly rose in his eyes as he stared at the newcomer. Heaven-venerating gates. Colored clouds surged and dissolved as heavenly light illuminated the sky. A heavenly gate emerged, its golden armor and garments more radiant than ever. Various banners rose and fell among the clouds, while two bright white gate pillars descended from the heavens. Chapter 1397, Golden Axe, II. Nuyen was clearly far stronger than Nuxeo. Though the enhanced heaven-venerating gate made his eyelids twitch, he still raised a hand lightly and released a streak of pink light as he shouted, Come. A small cassia rose into the air at astonishing speed. Riding the descending light of the Buddhist land, it wrapped around Master Bayin in Nuxeo's hands and gently drew him away. Nuyen's entire body blazed with golden light. He had clearly been prepared to receive the Buddhist radiance and chose this precise moment to act. Yet the heavenly gate did not descend toward him. The surging heavenly light instead crashed down on Nuxeo, seeking to sever the Buddhist radiance above. Li Ziming himself lunged toward her, completely unconcerned with Master Bayin. Tuzg. Seeing that his opponent truly did not care much for Master Bayan and was instead intent on harming their side, relentlessly pursuing Nuxiao, who could not yet receive the radiance, Nguyen felt himself at a disadvantage. He had no choice but to raise his hand to urgently restrain the radiant pass. If Nuxiao were to be crushed beneath it, she would likely lose her Dharma body. Then the Lord might think I harmed her on purpose to seize Master Bayan. Nguyen sighed inwardly. He abandoned Wang Xiaoxiao and his entire family to come all the way west just to take this Dharma sword. It seems he has sensed something. A pity. This makes things far more troublesome. He has already gained enough. Master Bayan is of no use to him. His aim is simply to kill as many of us as possible, and preferably eliminating Nuxiao as well. The great desire and emptiness Daos had long taken note of Taoist Master Zhejiang. In recent years, he had either stayed on the sidelines or remained hidden in the outer sea. Though both paths harbored some desire, they had found no opportunity to act. However, now that he openly stood with the supreme Yang Dao lineage and cultivated bright Yang as a Wei's Li, how could they not be tempted? Thus, the Buddhist cultivators were aware of the Li family's investigation into Master Bayan. Yet they also had their piece in the Wang family and knew Wang Quan belonged to Li, so they assumed that it was a diversion. After all, the Wang family had two individuals carrying threads of fate and possessed several ancient Dharma artifacts. How could the two sides compare? Those on the other end had even brought a Buddhist artifact, waiting for Zhejiang to arrive like a rabbit into a snare. Though the presence of the supreme Yang Dao lineage made killing him uncertain, grievously injuring him would already be ideal. Thus Zhejiang's arrival here, though not entirely unexpected, was still somewhat disappointing. This place lies beside the Buddhist land. He would not dare act excessively. Let him withdraw on his own. Now that Master Bayan was in his possession, Nguyen was not overly fearful. Fortunately, he had arrived quickly. The heaven-venerating gate above him was gradually descending, despite him trying to hold it back. The light of the Buddhist land had stripped 60 to 70% of its power, yet it still weighed heavily upon him and left him with a heart full of unwillingness. Heaven-venerating gate combined with purple mansion realm true fire, truly unfair. Fortunately, his own methods were extraordinary. His four arms joined together to form a spherical golden shield. Brilliant light surged forth with golden flames, seeking to overturn this divine ability. Crash! The profound fire of the three phases guard flooded the area beneath the divine ability and completely suppressed him. Even though Nguyen was adept in fire, he was still scorched until his entire body burned with heat. Yet Nuxiao felt a measure of relief instead at the sight. Without the greatest threats, the profound fire of the three phases guard and the heaven-venerating gate, he is like a tiger with its fangs removed. Brilliance of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers still flickered in the air as Li Ziming sat suspended in space and formed a seal. Layers of radiant fire descended from the sky with the light of the sun. Nuxiao glanced at it and found its power indeed far weaker, yet she did not dare be careless, having suffered losses before. Taking advantage of a moment's respite, she attempted to withdraw from the range of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers. Li Ziming did not let her go and immediately followed on a streak of light. Though she possessed a lotus throne, it was meant to augment herself rather than serve as a flying implement. With the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers continuing to entangle her, escape was impossible. Nuxiao gradually felt anger and resentment rise. The slender thousand hands behind her emitted light as she said with a resonant hum, "What do you intend now?" Before her words finished echoing through the air, Li Ziming vanished. Nuxiao immediately braced as if facing a great enemy. Ignoring the radiant fire and heavenly light before her, the brilliant light in her mouth was already prepared, while her escape light was fully activated. As expected, the great void flickered and heavenly radiance, hidden light emerged from within the descending radiant fire. She remained wary on all sides, knowing he intended to repeat the same tactic. Extending two fingers, she activated a spell art to temporarily block heavenly radiance, hidden light, while the golden glow behind her stayed unwavering, guarding against Li Ziming's possible appearance. Yet the heavenly light before her quickly faded. There was no one amid the shattered, radiant fire. Her confusion vanished in an instant as she turned her head toward the east. Suppressed beneath the divine ability and beset by true fire, Nguyen's expression suddenly changed. Not good. Almost in the same instant as his thought, the blazing true fire before him parted, and the Taoist master in white and gold finally appeared. His expression was cold. The azure-yellow spirit ruler at his side radiated mountain and river patterns that instantly enveloped the area, intensifying the suppressive force of the divine ability already grinding against him until it became difficult to endure. But what truly drew Nguyen's gaze was his hand. Li Ziming was holding a golden axe with a meter-long handle. The blade curved like a crescent moon, with embossed beast patterns rising across its heavy brown gold surface, reflecting a terrifying spirit light. Dense bright yang radiance clung to the axe, as though its presence alone could stagger him. A deep fear crept across Nguyen's face as two words surfaced in his mind: spirit artifact. The brilliant Yang King's axe in Li Ziming's hand was heavy as mountains and rivers, while the heaven-venerating gate locked him within blazing true fire. Nguyen was not without his own trump cards, yet his heart felt as though it had plunged into an icy abyss. A spirit artifact. Where did he obtain a spirit artifact? He had not feared being trapped because his opponent lacked any decisive means to truly harm him, but now the situation had reversed. With true fire burning, he could only raise his golden red lips and forcefully spit out a round pearl. The pearl was smooth and luminous, semi-transparent, with countless runes flowing across its surface. Clearly, it was a life-preserving treasure artifact refined over many years. At the same time, golden Dao light shone from between his brows and surged into the pearl. His eyes widened in strain. The short distance felt like an eternity as the spirit artifact descended upon him. Bang! The pearl treasure artifact took the first impact. The treasure artifact collided with the long-prepared spirit artifact. Dazzling radiant light sparked from the point of contact. The divine ability Mana Nguyen had. Infused vanished instantly, and the pearl was struck away at a speed barely visible to the eye. The brilliant Yang King's axe still gleamed with cold brilliance. Though slightly dimmed by the collision, as the treasure artifact flew away trailing radiant light, the axe burst forth with even greater bright light, seeming to grow stronger. A vast expanse of gold reflected within Nguyen's pupils. Clang! Dense brilliant light intertwined with bright yang radiance and surged skyward, climbing along the white gate pillars and across layers of celestial runes like a rising golden current. The divine ability heaven-venerating gate trembled in midair and transformed into a golden cloud stretching to the heavens as grains of sand and stone began to fall from it. Rustle! Sand and stones rolled down over Nuxiao's golden body. Bathed in the radiance, her entire face glowed gold, while the Buddhist light above flickered uncertainly. Deep fear rose within her. A spirit artifact of pure offense, a spirit artifact resonating with bright yang. There is no way he obtained this himself. We have been outmaneuvered by the immortal Tao. Chapter 1398, Breaking the Flame Eye. Light splitting. Purge the profane, punish the disloyal, trust none lightly, strike and there is killing. Li Ziming stood tall amid the surging wind and sand, gripping his long axe. The aura that had climbed to its peak gradually receded. Suspended at his side, the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers released a blue and yellow glow, freezing the storm of sand in place almost instantly. Behind him, the four-armed, gold-covered Merciful One remained where he stood, his body trembling slightly and riddled with fine fractures. Sand and gravel poured from the cracks, cascading down his form. Brilliant light also escaped in thread-like wisps from the fissures in his body. His imposing, gold-lacquered head had already dissolved into a storm of golden light rising skyward, his neck shattered with it. Deep crevasses cut across the center of his collarbones, and impact patterns spiderwebbed across his chest, reflecting rippling white radiance. Li Ziming seemed nothing more than a small point of light before him, yet he did not hesitate. His eyes turned pale gold, and with 2 fingers pressed before his lips, he suddenly blew out a mouthful of flame. The flame took on a faint purple hue, resonating with the profound fire of the 3 phases guard and tinting the true fire with a soft purple halo. Flame exhalation. A mouthful of radiant fire formed and surged forth alongside the profound fire of the 3 phases guard, pouring downward in a torrent. Above, the radiant pass flickered as the raging flames climbed along its seams. The massive headless Dharma body stood sluggishly beneath the gate, casting a vast shadow across the earth. Suppressed by the heaven gate and scorched by the true fire, the brilliant light fled more violently, and the Dharma body began to show rapid signs of melting. Merciful One Nguyen had dared to receive the heaven-venerating gate with his body, so his Dharma body was naturally formidable. Yet he could not move an inch as he was suppressed beneath the divine ability and burned by true fire. With the light of the Buddhist land severed and caught unprepared, nearly 90% of the blow had been borne by his Dharma body. Even though he had not been sent back to the Buddhist land by the strike, he was nearly knocked senseless. Only at this moment did the Merciful One Nguyen begin to recover. His headless body creaked under the pressure of the heavenly pass as a dim orb barely returned to support him. 2 eyes opened upon his chest, emitting light to guard his front, just as the Merciful One Nuxiao rushed in. The heaven-venerating gate shone brilliantly as the divine ability surged. Li Ziming remained calm, having already sensed subtle fluctuations within the great void. The Buddhist land's radiance grew stronger, and he frowned slightly. Another merciful one has arrived. It should not be from the great Desire Tao. They are watching from within the great void. The immortal mirror had already illuminated a merciful one standing within the great void. Brilliant light surged skyward, golden clouds beneath his feet. 3 eyes adorned his face, the one between his eyebrows containing a restrained purple-black glow that was quite startling. 2 more bright white eyes had grown upon his chest, marking him as anything but ordinary. This must be one from under the golden lotus throne. He appears to be highly accomplished. Though this 5-eyed merciful one sat within the great void with lowered eyes and no intention of acting, Li Ziming remained secretly vigilant and thought, this cannot be delayed any longer. As he faced the swiftly approaching Nuxiao, he merely tilted his head. The merciful one's many arms formed seals before rising together to release countless lotus leaf-like beams of golden Li. GHT, the merciful one also split into 3 forms, each wielding a saber, spear, and sword, striking toward his Dharma body. The golden light appeared ordinary and not particularly powerful, yet when the heavenly light at Li Ziming's brow illuminated it, a faint sharpness could be sensed. He knew these beams were not as simple as they seemed. It seems he is using his full strength. The ruler of manifested mountains and rivers glowed faintly before Li Ziming, assuming a poised stance. Blue and yellow patterns spread like ripples as the 2 sigils at either end lit up simultaneously. Sovereign weighing. Before the 3 bodies within the blue and yellow mountain river patterns could draw nearer, countless lotus leaf-like golden lights descended. Under the subtle clear radiance of sovereign weighing, one could discern a single, tangible petal of brilliant light among the dense golden lotus petals. The light splitting of the brilliant Yang King's axe would descend too slowly to block such a thing, so Li Ziming gently held the axe upright and turned it. Bright light. Pale white radiance immediately climbed across his body, yet Li Ziming's techniques did not end there. The brilliant solar radiant fire manifested first, followed by the rise of the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, and finally, the mountain-charging profound veil descended. The golden petals fell like rain upon the brownish-yellow mountain-charging profound veil, causing the barrier to tremble violently. When the single strand of brilliant light embedded within descended, the mountain-charging profound veil shattered completely. As the patterns of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers rippled, Li Ziming did not hesitate and stepped forward, closing the distance to Nuyen. Nuyen's Dharma body was already on the verge of collapse. Only the painstakingly refined treasure orb kept him alive beneath the heavenly pass. Even so, the blazing true fire still crawled over him. There was no chance for him to move. He merely watched Li Ziming with burning eyes, his lacquered golden gaze filled with venom. In that brief moment of respite, he understood that Nuxiao was unreliable, and the 5-eyed observer in the great void would remain uninvolved. The only thing he could do was raise his cassia high, abandon his shattered Dharma body, and transform entirely into surging brilliant light that rushed upward to strike the heaven-venerating gate. Had Nuyen been at full strength when abandoning his Dharma body to strike the heaven-venerating gate, Li Ziming would surely have been injured under the pincer assault. But having taken a light-splitting strike and lost most of his strength, the remaining brilliant light only lifted the heaven-venerating gate slightly before transforming into light and returning to Li Ziming's hand, forcing him back with nothing more than a pale face. The brilliant light of Nuxiao followed, landing upon Li Ziming's shoulder. The stable earth spirit containment failed instantly under the radiance. Only bright light shimmered faintly. A hollow sound rang out as heavenly light surged, faintly revealing shimmering white bones. Though the mountain-charging profound veil was not powerful, it could be summoned repeatedly with minimal cost and swift response. With it blocking the blow and bright light enhancing him, the injury was not severe. Yet his gaze followed the cassia rising into the sky while he probed with the immortal mirror. At this moment, 3 streaks of golden Tao light were already racing in from the eastern great void. They are closing in. Master Baiyan was tightly wrapped within the cassia, unable to move, leaving only a human-shaped outline. Empowered by Nuyen's dying mana, the garment glowed with golden light as it attempted to flee. Li Ziming stepped forward immediately, not daring to show excitement. The supreme Yang resonance radiant art in his hand transformed into a rope of radiant fire that pursued it. Nuyen must have known the location of the 5-eyed merciful one and realized Nuxiao could not be protected. Even in death, he would not allow it to be lost. With the 3 still distant, he could only send the cassia toward the 5-eyed merciful one. But now there is another. Indeed, the cassia had no chance to fly far. A great hand extended from the great void, divine ability flowing as it reached down and seized the garment. The man wore a Taoist robe with dark patterns on a blue base. His face was youthful, bearing a smile, with a vermilion mark at the center of his brows and a black cloud silver sparrow bottle at his waist. Grasping the cassia with one hand, he laughed. Obedient monk. Li Ziming felt half his burden lifted upon seeing him appear. After a brief moment weighing the situation, he dispersed his spell art with a wave and continued holding his axe, calming his mind. How dare you? As expected, 4 figures emerged nearby in radiant light, the Imposi. G Five-Eyed Merciful One sat among them with a solemn expression, 3 Merciful Ones standing behind him in fury as they shouted in unison, their voices like thunder. Li Ziming ignored them completely, while the Taoist master snorted in disdain. Both turned to look at the Merciful One Nuxiao trapped between them. Not good. The joy on Nuxiao's face had barely formed before it turned to terror. Losing all composure, she shed her brilliant light like evaporating vapor and fled into the great void in a single motion, clearly frightened out of her wits. Li Ziming stepped forward slightly, and with tacit understanding, the two entered the great void and vanished. Five-Eyed, you truly watched the tigers fight from the mountain. Now that the item is lost, let us see how you will explain this. Nuxiao appeared abruptly, eyes full of fury as she rebuked him, only to see the Five-Eyed Merciful One remain calm and speak quietly, ignorant. While you were fighting here, Chuni of the Great Void had already set his sights on me. If I acted, would it not alert the enemy? Your reinforcements arrived too slowly. Have you not considered what has gone wrong with your great desire Dao, and you still question me? I held off a purple mansion realm cultivator. It is your great desire Dao that has failed. Chapter 1399, Breaking the Flame, II. Great Void. Though Li Ziming had entered the Great Void, his aura remained locked onto the other party. Since a group of merciful ones had arrived, the two naturally retreated together. The Buddhist cultivators would have been happiest if the opponent had seized Master Bayan and escaped. However, the Taoist master approached with a full smile, not sparing the merciful ones even a glance as he moved south and praised, Zheujing, what fine skill. I am Xuanyi, I have long admired you. I have long heard your name. This man was none other than Taoist master Xuanyi of Jingyi Mountain. His reputation was well known, and Li Ziming had heard of him countless times. Taoist master Xuanyi had suffered greatly during the Chunyi Dao Gate encirclement years ago, and thus the two had never met until now. Li Ziming discreetly glanced at the black cloud silver sparrow bottle at his waist. Nuxiao clearly recognized Xuanyi, and their relationship seemed poor, which made him a potential ally. Moreover, Master Bayan was in his hands. He smiled and said, "This place is dangerous, please." There was no enmity between them and even some shared ties. He had benefited from small favors. If they seized the prize, it would naturally be shared. Li Ziming was not concerned about what followed. Taoist Master Xuanyi appeared unexpectedly young. Regardless of what lay within, his outward bearing was elegant. He laughed lightly and said, "I did not intend this. I never expected to encounter you here. It seems I have offended you." In the current situation, to snatch food from the jaws of the Buddhist cultivators, much was owed to Taoist Master Xuanyi. Li Ziming had truly resolved to seize Master Bayan, even at the cost of severe injury. Though Xuanyi had ultimately taken him, Li Ziming had long known he was watching and was not surprised. He had even accounted for him from the beginning. Though he had already captured Master Bayan with the supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art, without Xuanyi's appearance, he would have lost half his life escaping. Moreover, had the item fallen into the hands of the Five-Eyed Merciful One, a fierce battle would have been inevitable. There would have been no possibility of negotiation. That Five-Eyed Merciful One was likely equal to 2 Nuyans. Xuanyi forcing him to abandon pursuit was a far better outcome. This was why Li Ziming had let Xuanyi take it. The Buddhist cultivators already hated him. If they truly contested it while the item was in his hands, matters would become difficult. After all, the Buddhist land stands before us. The two traversed the great void as tremors spread in all directions. It was clear that conflicts raged across Jiangbei and the fighting had reached its final stages. Li Ziming asked, "There are still spoils to divide. Will Xuanyi not take a look?" Taoist Master Xuanyi waved his hand, his tone calm as he replied, "One appearance is enough. Chunyi Dao is also in Jiangbei. There is a risk of being caught by them wherever I go. Even if I fight, I may not win. If I am delayed, matters will become troublesome." Taoist Master Xuanyi was an outer sea cultivator who had contended with Chunyi Dao for many years and clearly had his own way of survival. Li Ziming nodded inwardly and had no interest in seizing anything else. He led him to Zheujing Mountain and appeared beneath the jade pillar. Xuanyi, clad in a Taoist robe with dark patterns on a blue base, seemed surprisingly suited to the gardenias covering the ground. He looked around Zheujing Mountain with appreciation. What fine scenery. Set the cassia on the ground and nodded kindly with a smile. the matter of shouting has troubled your esteemed family. He is ignorant and reckless, and I lack the ability to divide myself. Thanks to your esteemed family for mediating. My thanks in advance." "It is nothing," Li Ziming laughed and waved his hand, taking the initiative as he poured tea calmly, avoiding any appearance of eagerness. He said, "Let us first check Master Beiyin and ensure he has not been deceived by the Buddhist cultivators." "That is reasonable." Shuni nodded and beckoned lightly. The cassia, already weakened by his divine ability along the way, trembled and fell apart onto the ground. Master Beiyin tumbled out in a daze and cried out, "Ow!" Li Ziming suppressed his excitement and watched quietly. The old man climbed up and recognized him immediately, his eyes reddening as he kowtowed repeatedly. "Thank you, Taoist Master, for saving my life. Thank you, Taoist Master, for saving my life." Xuani's divine ability still lingered upon him. Li Ziming smiled. "It was Taoist Master Xuani who saved you." Holding his cup, Xuani smiled at Master Beiyin and said, "The storage pouch." Master Beiyin hurriedly handed it over, and Xuani accepted it casually. With a sweep of his divine ability, the storage pouch was forcibly refined and burst open with a bang, spilling its contents across the ground. This act before them was a gesture of transparency. Li Ziming's gaze appeared casual, yet his peripheral vision caught sight of a small, bright white spirit stone hidden among the clutter of bottles, talismans, and spirit items in an instant. The item lay discarded like refuse among the spirit items, only half exposed, while two brown Qi cultivation realm spirit items were carefully placed above it within a translucent jade box. The talisman seed within Li Ziming's Qi Si throbbed continuously, releasing wave after wave of cool currents. His blood surged with excitement, yet his face remained calm as he relaxed his brow. Not to mention him, even Taoist Master Xuani across from him relaxed, though it was for the Dharma artifacts on Master Beiyin. He laughed and asked, "Will Zheujing take first or shall I?" He paid no heed to Master Beiyin kneeling at the side as he asked openly. The old man remained kneeling, his gaze somewhat dazed. Numerous jade bottles and boxes shattered, revealing spirit items of varying worth, as Li Ziming's gaze swept lightly over them. The main pile had 4 Dharma artifacts, each gleaming impressively. A small box lay among them, untouched by the divine ability's force. It was entirely white with golden patterns and clearly no ordinary item. He smiled faintly and replied, "My family does not seek much, and he likely does not have it. Let us first take a look." Xuani smiled and nodded. With a flick of his finger, the white box with fine golden patterns opened on its own, revealing its contents. Inside were 5 small leaves shining with silver light, each no larger than a fingernail yet covered in fine fuzz. Every delicate hair emitted a faint glow, and a rich spiritual energy rushed forth, refreshing the mind. Li Ziming needed only one glance. The sensation was familiar to his spiritual sense. After brief consideration, he sensed the subtle mystic of the Capital Guard Dao. So it is a Purple Mansion realm's spirit material. Xuani lifted the jade box lightly and examined it in his hand. Though he said nothing of claiming it, his interest was evident. Seizing the moment, Li Ziming feigned sudden realization. With a quick flex of divine ability, the remaining items followed and settled upon the table, while the rest of the clutter rolled to the ground. With a casual sweep of his sleeve, he gathered them all inside. "Secured." He settled inwardly and nodded silently. Having already spread out all the spirit items and examined them with his spiritual sense, Xuani had no objection and merely nodded with a smile, saying, "Do you recognize this item?" Chapter 1400, Heaven and Earth, I. Li Ziming glanced at the Purple Mansion realm spirit material before him. Although it was precious, it stirred little in his heart. He said softly, "It belongs to the Capital Guard Dao lineage. I have fought Yehui before." Taoist Master Xuan cast an imperceptible glance at him and nodded. Indeed, this item is called Consecration Silver. Its origins are extremely ancient. The Miffin Dao lineage possesses it only because it was inherited from the Wanglin upper sect. Other Dharma artifacts may be fine, but they mean little to me now. Moreover, you control a lake within the mainland, so you lack nothing. Though he carries many treasures, none compare to this box of spirit material. Having secured the item, Li Ziming was far more at ease, yet he had no intention of letting go of the benefits before him. He nodded. "I know. The Capital Guard Dao lineage is nearly extinct now, only the capital. Immortal Dao is widely known beyond the mainland. Yehui was no weak opponent when he faced me. This item can indeed be considered precious." "Capital Guards." A trace of irony crept into Xuan's expression as he replied, "The various immortal Daos may not always hold the upper hand against Buddhist cultivators, but it is rare for an entire Dao lineage to be suppressed. Yehui may appear imposing, yet when his capital guard Dao meets a monk, the fight becomes far from comfortable. Oh, this was Li Ziming's first time hearing that the capital guard was almost extinct. Xu Wenyi lowered his voice, his tone fanning the flames. After Suxikong attained Dao, temples across the 9 provinces wept. The capital guard Dao lineage declined and never prospered again. Several major sects submitted to Mount Daoxuan. Later, when Emperor Wu ascended the throne, he claimed to cleanse the mainland as he destroyed temples and broke mountains. The capital guard Dao lineage was severed in its entirety. To this day, were it not for Yehui obtaining the Daoxuan Dao collection, this Dao would not be seen at all. In truth, this boundless essence is also his sore point. Li Ziming suddenly understood and offered his thanks. Xu Wenyi grew serious. These 4 Dharma artifacts all belong to Miffin. If you are willing, I will take 3 from this box of spirit materials and leave 2 for you, along with the Dharma artifacts, only. Xu Wenyi paused, then said with a sigh, I only hope Master Beiyin can come to my Jingyi mountain for a visit. His divine ability remained subtly wrapped around Master Beiyin as he spoke. The young man seemed calm, yet the black cloud silver sparrow bottle at his waist flickered faintly, revealing his firm resolve. Master Beiyin is someone he must have. Master Beiyin kept his head pressed tightly to the ground. He did not move and spoke not at all, yet his hands trembled faintly where they touched the floor. Even now, he still did not understand why a group of merciful ones had fought over him, nor why they had insisted on naming him specifically. Li Ziming fell briefly silent and said softly, Master Beiyin has some acquaintance with my family. When we once gathered Qi in the Great Desert, we stayed in his temple. Though the friendship is not deep, I must still ask how you intend to handle him. Taoist Master Xu Wenyi laughed softly. He lifted his robe slightly, revealing a pair of black boots with silver-lined patterns. Removing the black cloud silver sparrow bottle from his waist, he said aloud, This pure corner merit bottle was passed down by my master and is a treasure of our Dao lineage. Yet the bottle is heavy. For one whose fate is not strong, holding it is a death sentence. My journey to the mainland this time was to find a child who could bear it with his own body. The corner of his lips curled as he said with a smile, This person cannot be without cultivation. As for people like Su Yan or Xiao Yuan, I could not compete for them, and having them carry a bottle would be a waste of talent. Master Beiyin is at least at the foundation establishment realm. If a child cannot be found, an old man will do. Li Ziming did not fully believe him and reminded him meaningfully, Master Beiyin does not have much lifespan left. Xu Wenyi neither confirmed nor denied it. Li Ziming looked to the side and asked, And you? Only then did Master Beiyin lift his head, his face covered in sweat and filled with confusion. Xu Wenyi came from generations of Eastern Sea cultivators. He had only spoken a few extra words out of regard for the Li family's orthodox Dao standing and Li Ziming's presence. In truth, he did not care about Master Beiyin's opinion. He laughed lightly and said teasingly, You old fool, do you not see what a great opportunity this is? Zheajing has said your lifespan is short. What joy is there in simply living out your few remaining years? Stay by my side and I will feed you some spirit herbs. When death comes, I may even grant you another path. It is better than sitting and waiting to die. If you leave here today, you are bound to die. A Taoist master cannot follow you every day. Would that not put him in difficulty? Only by staying with me do you have a chance to live. His words were half true and half false, spoken to suit both sides. Master Beiyin began knocking his head against the ground. Thank you, Taoist master, I understand. Li Ziming held his teacup silently. Master Beiyin's response eased much of the tension. Since the old man had made his decision, he did not wish to create further complications and asked, Senior Changxi made many arrangements before his passing. Does Jingyi Mountain know anything of them? Xu Wenyi waved his hand and took a sip of tea. He said, Nothing serious. I am only helping him look after Kong Gumo. It is Yugong who gathered that person's entire family, which leaves me somewhat embarrassed, if Kong Gumo amounts to anything in the future, she will be the first he resents. He seemed to have a good relationship with Yugong and looked as though he regretted her shortcomings. He lifted his boot and said, She has had little contact with Buddhist cultivators and let them swallow her weapon. I will not speak of her further. Many thanks to Zheajing for making this possible. Before Xu Wenyi could finish speaking, snowflakes started drifting down from the sky. His expression tensed as he lowered his crossed leg. Qiuhu has arrived. It has truly been a long time. Li Ziming knew Ningguan had arrived. Whether or not Xu Wenyi had anything to hide, Ningguan's arrival took precedence over this Eastern Sea cultivator. He rose immediately to greet her. The fairy wrapped in wind and snow gracefully descended onto the platform. She glanced around and first looked toward Li Ziming in praise. Zheajing is truly formidable. I did not go to Wang Xiaoxiao's side, but Senior Qiuqi did. I heard the merciful ones returned empty-handed. I never expected that you would go and take that supreme Yin Dharma sword. Li Ziming was briefly stunned and immediately understood, a chill running through his heart. So the bald monks were waiting there for me all along. No wonder there were so few people in the West. Although he had the immortal mirror for protection, the situation in Jiangbei had been chaotic, with countless eyes watching. Had he truly gone to the Wang family, he might not have been gravely injured or killed, but he would certainly have returned empty-handed. Xu Wenyi appeared dignified in front of Ning Wan. His earlier carefree manner vanished and was replaced by a more serious tone. Fellow Taoist Ning. It was clear they had met before. Ning Wan returned the courtesy. Greetings, brother. Xu Wenyi rose to his feet, appearing somewhat hurried as he said, since fellow Taoist Ning has returned, the matters in Jiangbei must be nearing their end. I must depart at once lest I be intercepted. With that, he secured the pure corner merit bottle at his waist, distributed the items, and said hastily, that fellow from Xuanmiao Temple named Sumian looks like a decent man, yet he is secretly bent on joining the Devil Dao. He also has some resources and obtained quite a few of Changxi's treasures. Jiajing should be cautious and not fall into the old man's schemes one day. Li Ziming shook his head inwardly. The elder Sumian of Xuanmiao Temple had long spoken ill of Jingyi Mountain, and now this Xu Wenyi, though carefree and unrestrained, was just as merciless in his words. Which one can I trust? Perhaps neither can be trusted.